you're ready in the back room, my approximation of 1 minute goes pretty fast sometimes. First of all, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight for our regular meeting of first meeting in September of, what is today, the 5th? The 5th. So as we begin this meeting, we'd like to acknowledge that the land on which we are gathered is the territory of the Ottawa and Chippewa peoples who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. We want to thank you for your strength and resilience in protecting this land and inspiring us to uphold our responsibilities to do the same. As we go through our discussion tonight, which of course a couple of the items may be a little touchy for some of us here, but let's try to do so as we interact with each other with respect, dignity, patience, and charity. With that, I would ask that Grant Parsons lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, please.
Singled out here.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. With that, roll call, please.
Yes, good evening, Commissioner Werner.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Shamrow.
Here.
Commissioner Wilson. Commissioner Stanley.
Here.
Commissioner Treadwell.
Here.
Commissioner Colbert.
Here.
And Mayor Lewis.
Here. Okay, announcements from the interim city manager, please.
I have none this evening.
Okay, announcements from the city clerk.
I have some for this week, the week of September 4th. Meetings this week include the Mobility and Parking Advisory Board. They're going to meet on Wednesday, September 6th. That'll be at 11 a.m. in the Beta Transfer Station, which is located at 115 Hall Street. Also on Wednesday, September 6th, the Planning Commission will meet, and that'll be at 7 p.m. in the Commission Chambers. The City and Garfield Township Recreational Authority is also meeting on Wednesday, September 6th at 7 p.m. in the Garfield Township Hall at 3848 Veterans Drive. The City Commission is hosting a meeting this Thursday, September 7th, beginning at 10:30 a.m. in the Commission Chambers, and that's for the purpose of conducting city manager interviews. Also, that same day, but in the evening on Thursday, September 7th, there's an open house where all members of the public are welcome to attend and meet the candidates. That'll be held in the second floor training room of the Governmental Center. And again, that's on Thursday, September 7th. Finally, with respect to meetings, the Parks and Recreation Commission is meeting this Thursday, September 7th at 6:30 p.m. in the Commission Chambers. And then I just wanted to share, as usual, a plug that we're looking for volunteers to serve on different city boards and committees. Those opportunities include on the Local Officers Compensation Commission, the Human Rights Commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, Board of Tax Review, Coast Guard City Committee, Planning Commission, and also Parks and Recreation Commission. As always, anyone interested in serving in any of those capacities is encouraged to contact the City Clerk's office, and we'd be happy to chat with them about that. And then finally, I just want to remind everyone up here to please make sure to speak into the microphones, and that's all that I've got.
Thank you. And while you're on a roll, you might
Yes.
as well do the consent calendar.
All right, the purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission staff or the public can ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed from it and placed elsewhere on the agenda for individual consideration by the commission. Such requests will be automatically respected. If an item isn't removed from the consent calendar, the action noted in parentheses on the agenda is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. Item 1, consideration of approving the minutes of the August 21st and August 28th, 2023 meetings of the City Commission. Approval recommended. Item 2, consideration of authorizing a contract for the 2023 preventative maintenance crack sealing project for the 2023-2024 fiscal year with the option of the City Commission authorizing for 2 additional years. Approval recommended. Item 3, consideration of authorizing a confirming purchase order for unleaded fuel for city operational use. Approval recommended. Item 4, consideration of declaring 2 2014 Dodge Ram 1500 surplus and authorizing a purchase order for 2 new Ford F-150 hybrid pickup trucks for use by the Streets Division and Parks Division, which is a scheduled purchase. Approval recommended. Item 5, consideration of rescinding the February 7, 2022 action of the City Commission for a 2022 Ford F-150 hybrid pickup truck due to the lack of availability and consideration of authorizing a purchase order for a 2023 Ford F-150 pickup truck for use by a Traverse Narcotics Team officer. Approval recommended. Item 6, consideration of accepting a public utility easement for a public water main and sanitary sewer from West Boardman Shores LLC. Acceptance recommended. And finally, item 7, consideration of adopting a resolution scheduling a public hearing for October 2nd, 2023, regarding a request from property owners for a special improvement district for decorative street lighting at East Bay Boulevard South. Scheduled public hearing for October 2nd, 2023, recommended.
Anybody from the commission would like to have an item removed, please?
Item 6.
Item 6, okay. Item number 6. Okay, anybody else? All right, anyone from the audience like to have an item removed from the consent calendar? Going once, twice, sold. Okay, I'll be glad to entertain a motion, please.
I'll make the motion that we accept the consent calendar as amended.
Support.
We have motion and support. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, motion passes. Okay, Mr. Treadwell, you had item 6 removed?
Yes, this is concerning an easement along West Boardman Lake. In this particular property, I find it a little frustrating that after a decade of this particular parcel with this particular property owner refusing to allow an easement for the West Boardman Lake Trail that would have gone in more or less the same area, then coming to us and asking for a utility easement. And yes, we did complete the West Boardman Lake Trail, but it required being on the opposite side of the railroad tracks in that location, which included significant grade issues and added to the cost and difficulty of the project, which meant that it took longer to get completed. Yes, it did get completed, and yes, we have a lovely trail along the lake, but I can't help but look at this area and see where something could have been better. Furthermore, we have gotten, not related to this project, but related to other items on our agenda today, countless emails about the need to protect green space and our surviving tree canopy in the city of Traverse City. And I would argue that this area, a forested stretch along Boardman Lake, is one of the key places that isn't already designated as parkland or even publicly owned that is worthy of protection. Even before its current use, it had been a camping area for itinerant workers, hence the nickname Hobo Point, and before that it was location of an important trail connecting Grand Traverse Bay to what is now Lake Cadillac, used by the Native Americans that came before us for hundreds of years. Traverse City does not have an archaeological review committee similar to the cities of Rome, Italy, or Albany, New York, but even though I have wished we had one at multiple points, I have not formally advanced that as a policy yet. But if we had such a board, they would recognize the likely archaeological importance of this site, considering its past use for camping and as a trail, and it would have behooved us as a city to protect and recognize the heritage of those that came before us, to see what could be learned from what was yet in the ground before bulldozers unceremoniously tore down the hill. Thank you.
Thank you. So everyone knows this is a privately held property. It was bought from the railroad by these two brothers many years ago. The city did attempt to purchase it on numerous occasions. They were not willing to sell, so here's where we are today. They are wanting to develop them, and I don't know how many lots they'll get out of it, but this is what's in front of us. They are not allowed to have wells or septic systems in the city, so they got to have a water and sewer that runs to them. This is, and I don't know if they've already put the lines in or not, but, they become our lines. And so now we got to make sure that we have a document that says we have the easement to that so that we can maintain and take care of those lines because they are public. So with that, that's where we are. So,
Did you have something? I just want to, sorry, Mayor, make it perfectly clear that this is the property owner granting the city an easement, not the city granting the property owner
Yeah,
an
yeah,
easement.
they're giving us the easement.
Had Mitch not pulled this, I was going to pull it as well. We're starting to receive calls and letters blaming the city for this turning into developed land after 20 years of working to make this beautiful trail. This is being done by right.
Yeah.
This is not the city, and I know that the Tart Trails and the city and the Land Conservancy all tried to negotiate some other decision for this property. So please don't think that we are behind this.
We're not.
It's happening by right.
That's correct.
So as a city, what's our legal responsibility to accept this easement?
The city, if the city doesn't accept the easement, then the easement will not exist. The city has to accept any property interests that it is given. But if we don't accept it, we would not have access to the utilities underneath.
And can they connect their utilities to the city system?
They have to connect
They have to.
utilities to the city system.
Yeah.
It's required. They requested
what-
previously to have well and septic, and that is not allowed.
Do we know the schedule of when they plan to connect this to the city system?
I do not know the schedule.
So legally, you're saying we would lose in court if we say no?
If you want to say no as an avenue to prohibiting the property from being developed in the way that it's allowed to be developed by right, eventually, that's the likely result.
I was afraid of that. Thank you.
Well, this is one of those necessary, one of those or I shouldn't say traps. This is one of those items that we don't have a lot of flexibility on. So I'm going to make the motion that the utility easement from West Boardman Shores, as included with the official meeting materials for the September 5th, 2023 meeting of the City Commission, be accepted.
Support.
And support. Okay. I'll open it up for anyone from the public that has anything they'd like to add to the topic. Okay. All right, hearing none. With that, I will ask, we have a motion to support. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Werner,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Shamro.
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell,
No.
Commissioner Colbert,
Yes.
and Mayor Lewis.
Yes. Regretfully.
Regretfully, indeed.
Okay. All right. With that, before we get on to the old business, I'm going to go ahead and, if there's no issue, to move item 1, which is only one item under new business, which is the report from the Local Officers Compensation Commission. And to introduce this, I can either turn it over to you, Nate, or I can turn it over to the city clerk, who's the chair of the
Staff
presider of the lot.
support,
Staff
yes.
support, whichever.
Benjamin's going to be better suited to address this.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you. We have Kate Green with us this evening, who's going to be presenting the report. Kate is the chair of the Local Officers Compensation Commission, and for the City Commission, I think you're all aware, but really for the public, the Local Officers Compensation Commission determines the compensation that the City Commission receives. The board is charged with that responsibility. There are strict eligibility requirements, so there's no conflict of interest for those that serve on that. And then they also make recommendations regarding compensation to other city boards or committees. The only city board or committee beyond the City Commission that gets compensation is the Board of Tax Review. And the only other thing I'll say, and Ms. Green might also say this too, so I don't want to steal your thunder, is just when you look at this for a city commission, it automatically goes into effect in 30 days from now unless you took an action to reject it. But I urge you to not look at this as compensation for yourselves, but rather for the seats. And it's the responsibility of this Local Officers Compensation Commission to look at the data and make a determination. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kate Green.
Thank you. Thank you, City Clerk Marentet. And thank you for all of the help that you have provided kind of on our committee or sitting with us. in my experience, I do quite a lot of work with compensation, and in my experience, usually people are pretty interested in what we have to say here. And so I hope you'll also be interested in what we're doing and be, maybe happy with the results. You have my report in your packet, so I won't, go over all of the details. You probably looked at that. But I guess starting out, thank you for the plug. We are looking for some new members on our commission. So if you're interested in this kind of thing, please let the city clerk's office know. And I also want to just take a moment to recognize longtime compensation committee member Peg Siciliano. She actually served with us since 1997, so thank you, Peg. She's not here tonight, but she's, if you know Peg, she's a steady, even-keeled person, and certainly a newer person like me on the committee appreciated her background. So as the city clerk mentioned, our charge is to take a look at compensation. Our methodology was to look at comparable communities and kind of gauge where Traverse City is at, with our hope of kind of being in the middle. And so we've made the recommendations. I'm happy to report that the committee unanimously agreed on those recommendations, and that's what we submit to you. So if you have questions, I'm happy to take them at this point.
I think the only action that is required on our part tonight is that we do have to take action as it relates to the
Compensation for Board of Tax Review.
compensation for the Board of Tax Review. So,
Yes.
okay, and so that's the only motion we have to deal with, unless the commissioner wants to put this on an agenda the next month, for any other action. So.
I'll make a motion that the compensation for the Board of Tax Review be increased to $288.38 per day for 2023, which reflects the All Urban Consumer Price Index for December 2021 through December 2022, and that the 2024 per day rate be increased by the Urban Consumer Price Index rate for the period of December 2022 through December 2023.
Okay. We have a motion
Support.
and support. Okay, any questions from the audience? Any questions? Oops, a little quick. Okay, any questions from up here? Thank you for your work and your time for all that.
Thank you.
With that, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Thank you. With that, we're back to old business. First of all, we have a public hearing, or scheduling a public hearing.
No, this is the public
Oh,
hearing.
this is the public hearing for a special land use for addiction treatment services to be located at 441 East State Street, as recommended by the Planning Commission. Should I turn this over to you?
Yes, I can do a introduction. So the Planning Department received an application from Addiction Treatment Services for a residential care and treatment facility at the property that they own at 441 East State Street, which is allowed in the zoning district through a special land use permit. They currently use the facility to house women who are experiencing substance abuse, but currently they have to be transported off-site for those services associated with substance abuse. The Planning Commission did hold a required public hearing on June 6th. After one person spoke on one person spoke to support the request, no one in opposition. The Planning Commission did vote to approve unanimously. However, in talking with the city attorney, they did find that there was a part of the step that was missed. There was a few other considerations that needed to be given. So they reopened the public hearing after properly noticing it on July 18th, held another public hearing. Again, no one spoke. The Planning Commission again voted unanimously to recommend approval here at the City Commission following a public hearing. With that, I do turn it over to you, Mr. Mayor, to hold that public hearing, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Does anyone up here have any questions right off the bat? Okay. With that, I'll open the public hearing, and those that wish to come up to speak, would you give the rules?
I sure will. So the purpose of this public hearing is, of course, for the commission to have the benefit of anyone's thoughts regarding this proposed special land use permit. The mayor has opened the public hearing, so for those who wish to address the commission, please come to the podium, state your name and address, indicate if you're a city resident, non-city resident, or city business owner. But before we open it up for anyone, I want to ask if there's a representative from Addiction Treatment Services who wishes to address the commission. All right, great. If you could come forward and introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hi there. My name's Paula Lipinski. I'm the CEO for Addiction Treatment Services. I'm also a person in recovery, a woman in recovery, as well as a mother in recovery from alcohol use disorder. Addiction Treatment Services has been in the community for over 40 years. We are looking to open this program specifically for women with their children to allow for a unique experience. Many times the barrier for women to come into treatment is a place for their children to go. Personally speaking, I was lucky enough to have family resources, wonderful parents, as well as a supportive ex-husband who supported me by taking care of my children, but many women do not have that. So this would be an opportunity for us to provide treatment within the home and allow the women to remain with their children. We would also make referrals to community resources and other community supports. We did canvass the neighborhood prior to the first planning session public hearing, and we also had an open house to allow for neighbors to come in and provide feedback, but then also acknowledge that we are members of this community, we have been members of this community, and we want to continue to support the community. We received, a majority of the response we received was positive, and a substance use disorder is a disease that affects a number of people in this area, and as we can see, behavioral health is an increasing need, and we are just trying to do our part as an agency. And I'm here to answer any questions or concerns as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll see if there are any questions that need to come up. All right, public hearing is open. Anyone that wants to come up, please do so.
And I did forget to mention that we have a 3-minute time allotment. I think people are used to that, but when your time has elapsed, the timer will beep. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Lori Jean Hunt. I live at 427 East State Street, so I'm just 2 doors down from this property. I've been at this residence for 35 years. I've also been in recovery for 29 years. I had always supported the treatment center there, but I have to say that 35 years ago when I moved in there, it was not the neighborhood that it is now. Where Little Fleet is, that's right out the back door of Phoenix Hall, was Jack's Market, where you bought fruits and vegetables and ice cream. Now, it is a party central. I invite any of you to walk down that alley behind these 2 houses at night, especially on the weekend. The party goes from 11 o'clock till 11 o'clock at night during the week, after midnight during the weekend. The bands are playing so loud that at my house I can hear them in the house with all the windows closed. The pedal pub goes around the block all the time, drinking, partying, loud music, and they block off the street many times. That's right at the side of Phoenix Hall, and literally it's right across the alley. This is a big party central. And I have to say that with all my years of recovery, when all that moved in, it was very unnerving for me with all the time I have. We know that the success rate for people in recovery is very low. And to what feels like to me sabotage them right out the gate with the location of this. So I encourage you to make that walk and see if you still think this is a good location. These are beautiful homes that could be sold for a small fortune and bought something for a safer location for the clients. I'm just having a really hard time on a personal level understanding how they think this is a good location, and when I hear that there's going to be children there, I'm even more unnerved. So I hope they don't get the land use permit. I would rather see them in a safer location for not only their clients but also those children. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Jack Langford. I'm a city resident that lives on 5th Street.
I've lived here my whole life, and I just wanted to come up and talk a little bit about accessing resources. So I work in the homeless response system, so addiction treatment services, one of my favorite organizations, constantly referring out. And then I also am the president of Evergreen Community Group, so I'm very aware of handing out resources to people. I have a Pokedex of resources. And the thing about resources
Speak
is...
to the commission.
Sure thing.
Okay,
The
thanks.
thing about resources is you can give them out a million times. It's if someone can actually use them. So I know, I totally understand Little Fleet, it's a bar area, there's lots to do, but I'd like to remind everyone, that's about 12 weeks out of the year, and that's gonna be a thing everywhere. We're seeing more breweries pop up in different spots, but why there's that concern, I also have the excitement that this is downtown. We're talking about downtown. These women can get retail jobs downtown that are more flexible. They're close to Beta, they're close to Munson, they're close to all those resources that go hand in hand with addiction treatment services. And I just think it's really important to consider how close other resources are and how much easier they are to access when you can walk to them, when you can bike to them. But yeah, I do think it's a good concern to think about Little Fleet. However, I think Little Fleet's a really wonderful business, and those other businesses, I'm not too concerned about the type of crowd and culture that they bring there. So that's just kind of my piece.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Mary Harwood, and remind me what all I need to tell you. My address,
Your address, if you would. Yes.
3255 Supply Road. I'm outside of the city limits.
Great. Thank you.
I'm a person in recovery. I'm a clinical therapist, and I will be the program manager for Phoenix when it opens. When we were a residential facility before, we were directly behind Little Fleet. We're moving right next door. It's an amazing source of resources. Thank you. It also, when Little Fleet is open and in full force, the girls do talk about it. It's a great opportunity to learn some coping skills. This stuff is out in reality. The only way to put them in a safe place away from the drugs and the alcohol is really away. And I don't want to see any of the women go through that. I want them in a home where they have lots of resources and a lot of support. So that's my push, is to get this residential center up and running. We have women, we have children that literally, some women are dying to get in here. We need this resource for these women. They are going to learn coping skills, and this is an amazing place for them to learn these coping skills. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Why don't you come on up? Why don't you come up and just get in line, please? Thank you.
Excuse me, did I cut in front of you?
No,
Okay.
you both moved the same time. You were just closer.
Grant Parsons, 6936 Mission Ridge. I'm not a city resident. I have a city business or a business on Union Street. I'm not speaking against the center because I don't know enough to speak about it. I'm asking you, as you consider this special land use permit, just keep it in context that the Boardman neighborhood, I grew up a couple houses away from this site. That neighborhood is very narrow. Between 8th Street and the pressure of commercial development on 8th Street and the commercial development on Front Street, any house in a neighborhood that fragile that gets turned over to a commercial use, as good as this commercial use is, it really is. There's no dispute.
Please
about that.
direct your comments
Okay,
to the
I'm
commission.
sorry.
Thank you.
As good as a commercial use as this may be, it does impact the neighborhood for parking just because it is a commercial use, not a residential use. So as you go forward, I mean, you can approve this one for all I know. Just keep it in mind that this is a very fragile neighborhood. I appreciate it. Thank you.
My name is Justin Reed, 630 Cottage Drive, Apartment 1B, Traverse City resident. So, I've heard a lot about this Anyways, I've heard a lot about this program. And, I think it's the right fit. I think it's with downtown, with all of the business owners complaining about how we don't have any help whatsoever and we're low on staff. Unfortunately, that is the case. And with this addicted treatment services residential, is that something that can fill that slot of those businesses downtown looking for help and staff. So, unfortunately, the one thing about Traverse City, it's tourism. That is the essential model of Traverse City, is a service industry. Unless someone else tells me different, we don't have any manufacturing in Traverse City. So, what else is there? There's tourism. So, in order for having tourism in the service industry, you need people to be into town or close to town. And that means you're going to have to bring in new people. And that means there has to be a range of people with their abilities. And that is a connection that seems not to be with the residents of Traverse City. Because most of them just want to hold on to this idea that we're a very small town. I'm sorry, but we aren't. And unless we do not grow, we're just going to slowly just, lose our economy over it. So thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you. Okay, I bring it back to the commission. Anyone have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, do you mind if we have the woman who's representing the place?
Paula?
Yes, Paula. This same thing came up at the Planning Commission, and I believe she answered this concern of
Okay.
being close to the downtown. Sorry, Paula, for not
Oh, by the
remembering
way,
your
the
name.
public hearing is closed.
Yes, room to question.
I just didn't throw the hammer. Okay.
What specific question? Is it regarding the parking or
No,
the?
it's regarding the being close to drinking establishments and whether that is a hindrance for your mission.
So I don't believe it's a hindrance for the mission. Our properties have been located in Traverse City for 40 years. As we can all know, our city has changed immensely. I appreciate that someone could see our properties and acknowledge that we might be able to buy something elsewhere. That's not a really quick reality for us to purchase something. And there's not a lot of things out there for us, properties for us to purchase in general. These are the assets we have as a small nonprofit, and these are the things that we want to do to respond to a need that is extremely significant. This was also a property that has been historically housing women and children. And any time that there is the comment, I believe that my program manager, Mary, brought up the point, this is an opportunity to educate and support the residents of our facilities. DeKoski Hall is our men's facility, and that's located just around the corner from Brady's Bar. The reality of Traverse City is, with all the information that's been shared of the pub, the peddling pub, the Little Fleet, pretty much everywhere we go now, there's alcohol served in many capacities. So we would possibly be pushed out of a community that we have grown and taken care of for 40 years. And as a person in recovery, I take offense to that in reality, to say, well, just put us somewhere else. I think that it is our responsibility as the service providers to educate people and to provide the treatment to support them in the environment in which we live in.
Thank you.
Is there any
Thank
other
you.
questions?
No, ma'am. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you for your work, Paula. Being someone that's in recovery myself for 4.5 years, I'm glad you're out there. I'm also happy that I didn't have to go into a recovery hall, but I'm glad they're there for others that have to go there. So thank you very much for your service, and we'll take it from there. Thank you. I'll be glad to entertain a motion, please.
I've got it. I believe this is it, that the findings in the staff report?
It's the
that
one.
Yes?
Yes.
I'd like to move that the findings in the staff report 23 SLUP-01 be adopted, and that the special land use permit application submitted by Addiction Treatment Services to provide a residential care and treatment facility at the existing structure located at 441 East State Street be approved, and that the city attorney be authorized to execute an order granting.
Support. We have a motion and support. We had a public hearing, but I'll open this for any other public comment. Seeing none. Okay, we have a motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Paula. All right, with that, we are underneath the next item that was on our agenda at our last regular meeting. Some great questions were asked, and it deals with the authorizing an out-of-scope agreement for the design, engineering, and construction management of the project relating to a rooftop solar, what's PV mean?
Photovoltaic.
Never mind.
went through this once before.
They both said it better than I would, I'm on that.
Rooftop solar photovoltaic battery storage project. Okay. I think a lot of the questions are in the memo that are addressed, but we'll bring it back up. So who wants to? lead
I'll
this?
start that, and I'll have Art come up if there are questions later. So as the mayor articulated, this was left without action at our last meeting because we did have a couple good questions come up that I just didn't have answers to at that point in time, and I do feel that we have provided some answers to the commission. First and foremost, just a reminder, the main reason this conversation is being had is because we received a $1.6 million plus grant from the Michigan Public Services Commission to install rooftop solar and a battery backup system at the wastewater treatment facility. This grant what was awarded was less than what we originally requested. We originally requested the total cost of the project. However, the MPSC came back to us with a lower amount and said, this is what we can do as long as you keep the scope the same. So the first question that I was the most uncomfortable with was the question about the roof structures. As you'll see in the summary from Jacobs, they did provide an answer that all of them did receive a preliminary assessment on what they could accommodate, as well as in the cost estimates, there was some line items that were set aside to do some additional roof bracing as necessary. The reason this one caught my attention is because I've been through this before and had to increase the capacity of some roof truss. So I do feel more confident there. They also provided a couple alternatives should we find, as we go into greater depth into the engineering, if it can't accommodate a couple different steps to mitigate the impacts to the total scope of the work. The battery piece and the, I guess we'll say the financial viability and the impact that the power will be generated at the plant. Just to be kind of frank here, the only reason this project has really kind of gotten this far is because of that battery. It's the battery that makes this project make a little bit of sense. As the City Commission knows, we already receive 100% of our electricity generation from renewable resources. What makes this particular project viable is with the solar and with the battery, we can potentially leverage those for peak shaving. When you have a high energy user like the wastewater treatment plant, in those periods of high demand, you're essentially paying a penalty for the excess energy that you're using. So through peak shaving, which is outlined in Jacob's memo, talks a little bit about how that will save us dollars over time and help pay back at least the difference that's not covered by the grant. If it weren't for this grant, I don't even know that we'd be talking about this project, to be honest. It's the grant that makes this a financially viable project, and the battery was added to actually make it make sense from a policy standpoint, again, because we already receive all of our energy from renewable resources. I think that was the two primary questions. Art, did I miss anything? So with that, I will, no, I covered it. Never mind. With that, turn it back over to you, Mayor and City
Okay.
Commission.
Okay. Mr. Tweetmeyer, I see you're with us tonight. Then did we get most of your questions answered, sir? I mean, you're the one, you brought these up, and we thank you for that.
You're welcome. For the record, Bill Tweetmeyer. I reside at 300 East Bay Boulevard North, Traverse City. I'm a city resident. The reason why I had it pulled a couple weeks ago was I had some concerns. The biggest one was the financial aspect. Since the grant did not cover the full amount of the project, my concern was that the city was going to be on the hook for the full $176,000 shortfall. And because we are a participant in a master sewer agreement with the surrounding townships, I felt that townships needed to pay their fair share. And I'm happy, when I talked to Art earlier this evening, he informed me that he has indeed talked to the County Board of Public Works Director, and that at least they're on board with, yes, the townships should pay their fair share. And that's very important, because if there's a project overrun, like say this project morphs into 2.2 million or 2.5 million, I certainly would hate to see the city ratepayers have to be on the hook for that full amount, because those township communities, they're also responsible because of their flow that goes into the wastewater treatment plant. As far as the battery energy storage system, I understand where the city's coming from. The only way that they probably were eligible for this massive grant from the Michigan Public Service Commission is by virtue of the battery system. But as I pointed out in the graph that's in the grant application, the amount of electricity that's used at the wastewater treatment plant is 10 times the amount of energy that you're going to get from this solar array. So quite honestly, I don't even know how it's possible that you can get additional electricity generated from this solar array that can be stored in a battery, because all of that electricity is going to be used at that wastewater treatment plant. So my hope is that the Light and Power folks and the Jacobs folks and city folks can figure out some mechanism by which they can use that battery rather than just having it sitting there for years on end, because there's no electricity that will be absorbed into that battery energy storage system. And with that, that's all that I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
If I could just, first off, thank Mr. Tweetmeyer, because that was the piece that I left out on the Board of Public Works. Again, he's not wrong. And as we go through this engineering process, it's through the programming and how the solar array and the battery and all the controls behind it are programmed to work that this is all going to get sorted out. But the goal of this project, especially with all this public feedback, is going to be to make sure we're fully utilizing the battery to a point that we can take advantage of shaving power usage during those peak times so that we are getting a financial benefit from this. And just totally off topic, if I can just say it for a minute, I just want to thank Bill for helping us out in the finance department still, even though he's been retired, since we've been a little short staffed. So thank you, Bill.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I missed the previous meeting about this, but to me, a key part of what's in the well, I'll call it the memo, in our packet here, is the final sentence, page 3, where it says, similar to the storage pilots, MPSC has been encouraging Michigan's investor-owned utilities to undertake to better understand how storage benefits the grid, blah, 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 blah. So to me, it's about understanding what's to come in the future. This is a very small part, as Mr. Tweetmeyer said, 10% of what's needed at the wastewater treatment plant. And the way, in my mind, I come to terms with what this might be able to do, a big part is just education for our community, including Light and Power. So there's benefit to Light and Power to have this as a test piece. And one way to think about it is, if on the open market electricity costs fluctuate, just pretend it's every hour, it's actually more frequently, but pretend it's every hour. we can store cheap electricity on those batteries and then use that electricity when on the open market it's very expensive. Just, that's an oversimplification, but it's one way to help understand how these batteries, even though they're a very small part of what the wastewater treatment system uses, how they'll not just sit there inactive for years and years. They can still be active as we test and learn and understand. Thanks.
Especially as it comes to major, hopefully down the road, bigger projects with better batteries. So at least we'll have a better idea of how they get used. If you ask me, I don't understand a thing about it. So I just know it's supposed to work, and that's what you're going to find out. So there we go. Any other questions? Okay, I'll be glad to entertain a motion, and thank you everyone for doing the further research. Okay.
I'll make a motion that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute an out-of-scope agreement with Jacobs in an amount not to exceed $257,892 for design, engineering, and construction management services for the rooftop solar, photovoltaic, and battery storage project at the Traverse City Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant. Such agreement subject as to its substance by the interim city manager and is formed by the city attorney.
Support.
Okay, we got a motion support. Okay. Anybody else from the public? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes, and thank you for this project, and I hope it, Mark, I wish you well in your endeavors to come up with the right game plan. Thank you. Okay. With that, our next item is consideration of authorizing a request for proposals for city-owned Beitner properties. I think it was at the first meeting, I can't remember what meeting we did this at. The first meeting or our first study session in August, we had a discussion on this. And because you weren't going to be here, we wanted to make sure we were back to being here. So I know we went through it. We had a number of topics that had to be dealt with. One of the things that has popped up since our initial overview of this deals with the permit we have with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, that it will have to be amended in order for us to find a different site for the laydown area. They're not opposed to having a different site, but the permit, I think I saw from an email that Frank believes it'll take probably, a couple months at best?
Couple months.
A couple months at best to get the permit amended. So if that's what we want to do, then we can move forward with that. I think you already know my feelings as it relates to this particular need to whether we should do this or not, but we need to give the commission, we need to give staff the direction whether we want to pursue this going after this RFP. I think, as we said before, whether we do this or don't do this, I think we have a better RFP for future properties we may want to consider, we should consider for sale for affordable housing, workforce housing, or whatever the term may be. But we have a better blueprint for how we can put that together and all the items that we need to deal with in that. So, open up for however you think we should proceed. Okay. And
I'll be brief. Just with the work of the sorry, did somebody else?
No, you did.
That's fine.
Just with the work of the ad hoc, I guess I would at least like us to continue that process, and we approved the use on airport access for a laydown area. So to have the agreement with the Army Corps modified to allow that as the laydown area. And then this body or the next body can still decide whether or not to proceed with the RFP. And I think it was discussed many months ago, even if we proceed with the RFP, we don't have to accept any proposals. If none of them meet our intent, we don't have to accept a proposal.
The only thing I would suggest that if we're going to go out and do an RFP, we need to be serious about it, because those that are putting that RFP together are spending quite a bit of money, time, and work to give us their best shot. I'm not saying they would do everything we want done.
We do, and that's just it. If they don't meet what we put in there, like it's been mentioned, presumably certain members at least have expressed interest in soundproofing, et cetera.
Yeah.
And so if
Yep.
none of them rise to the standards that we've expressed, then none of them meet the standards. And we say, thanks.
First of all, that's good to hear because there have been times, where, maybe not necessarily with RFPs, well, one or two I can think of over the years, where we've said things, but they still get presented to us, and then it's a snowball rolling, and you can't stop it. And so it's good to hear that for the future discussion. I did have a question right now, though, of this would take 2 months to reopen it for the laydown that is going to happen. This just got restarted. Where are we at right now? Does this mean there's a pause for 2 months, or was there going to be a pause for 2 months anyways, or where are we at with the actual process right now?
It's difficult for me to really speak to that because that's between the Army Corps and the contractor, and I know that they are working with them right now. So I don't really know how much of a delay it would be for the permit to also be, that's a separate process that we would have to start to amend the permit.
Let me ask the question. Right now, they have permission to use the front parcel of Beitner, correct?
Yes.
And, and we've also given them the right to use the parcel over by Airport Access Parsons, also for a special lay-down yard for the large for large items. We still need to come up with another spot for them, correct?
I think I'm going to ask Frank if that's so, because Frank is better
Okay,
understanding
Frank.
of the overall project than I
So
probably do.
is the parcel over on Airport Access the only lay-down yard they need if we were to move it over to there?
Frank Katuri, Director of Public Services. The original permit includes 2 parcels, Parcel 1 and Parcel 2. Parcel 1 is the one at Airport Access, Parcel 2 is the Beitner property.
Okay. But we could continue on, and they're not really ready to start work yet, but we could continue on knowing that we may want to, they already said they'd be glad to use another one, but they haven't ready to start work. So we could be possibly saying, here, we'll grant you this spot that they would a lot like to see, could we not?
That's an option.
Well, it was an option. That's what you gave us.
I think the work of the ad hoc revealed that there is an option to provide other lay-down areas
Correct.
that may or may not have fees associated with them. And if that does occur, there would be amendment to the permit that is necessary.
Okay.
Can I go back to my original question, though, of if we are to say that we want to reopen this and move this for 2 months, it'll take about 2 months, is that going to impede any of the work immediately in 2 months?
The 2 month answer is kind of best guess. There's a couple of processes.
Very true.
that-
Everything's always kind of looking into a crystal ball. So
Yep.
approximately 2 months. Let me change that.
Sure, because it has to go through the joint permit application amendment and the Army Corps process. So being that we don't, at this point, don't have a fully negotiated
Alternative
instrument
site.
to move forward with the project, I would say that best guess 2 months is from the time we actually have that. So I just hate to nail down an absolute time.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, it would still require an amendment to the original permit with any balance in or mitigation for the change in location.
Well, yes.
Did I answer the question?
Well, you've answered as much as you can, just more mud.
Yeah, just to add more mud to Frank's answer is, we are talking about both the federal and the state governments on this project, and so that makes us a little nervous. The other thing I'd just like to throw out there is, as we talked about in the study session, we do not believe as staff that this is operationally in our best interest to dispose of this property, and to keep it up in the air puts us in a bad spot in the sense of the ongoing facilities master planning process that's going on with the city and the county. It's a joint project. This site is active. We just had an update on it today, and the commission will be hearing more, I think it's October. This is actively being pursued as part of a collaborative assessment and reapplication and assignment of operational locations. Keeping it up in the air, we're going to have to basically take it off the table, and we're going to have to go back to the drawing board, which even without that, we still wouldn't agree that that's a good idea.
I mean, I'm not 100% sold on this, but I feel like isn't the facilities report due in November?
At the end of the year is
Okay.
the goal,
So
but
I guess, again, I'm not 100% sold on this at all, but it's at this moment. But I guess that, to me, that would actually be more informative of, here are your choices. You can do this collaborative project and have this, and this is the vision, instead of saying, well, we have plans for it that have always been this mysterious, we have plans for it out there, and here's a plan we actually have. And then that gives the other side to say, or you can build this apartment here. And I think probably, given what's going to be put together, the option what we can do with the land we already have there, with the purpose that it already has, will probably look appealing to everybody. But right now, I guess I'm saying, you kind of made it sound like we'd have to hit the brakes on it. I guess I'm curious why we'd have to hit the brakes on it.
well, it's because if it's not a viable option, then we need to put our energies elsewhere. We're under a project that has a scope and has a timeline that we are a participant in, but we are not the project managers in either. You are going to see an update on that progress of this planning sooner than the end of the year. You'll be hearing from me probably by the end of the week on potential dates for a joint. We're going to try again to do it jointly with the Board of Commissioners to do this update together. So we're going to be trying to get something here scheduled in the next, I would say, 3 to 4 weeks, with additional stakeholder outreach happening sooner than that.
I was convinced at the last meeting that waiting until that information is before us makes sense. I have been a supporter of looking at this land for housing, but hearing the big picture and wanting to support staff and the progress they're making seems important to me, so I'm not particularly interested in moving ahead. And I'm confused now about how the Fish Pass thing impacts that. If we don't move ahead with the RFP, then it's okay to use it for the
Well,
laydown?
that all could be talked about, and we can let staff continue to work on it and make an assumption that we are going to relocate it, that, we have options, and to bring back those options and let them work on it. Project hasn't started yet, so they don't need that particular property right this very moment, but they will need it sooner, probably within, so we can let them work on it. So I'm not as worried about that part of it as I am other items. So, yes, sir.
I guess a question for the city clerk or maybe the city attorney, if she remembers. When was our last Beitner ad hoc meeting?
Our last Beitner ad hoc meeting, I want to remember, it was toward the last of June.
So we're 2 months past that already. So to me, it's kind of a false urgency, like, oh, now, or like, oh, we're going to delay it 2 months. Well, we've already spent 2 months waiting for this point. So I would still be in favor of moving forward to at least see if the Corps is willing to have an alternative laydown area.
I would agree with you, and just as what I said, let us work to get that alternative out there. But also, you got to remember, the court finally made their decision about 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. So we've also been waiting on other actions to move this forward. So with that, I mean, where I've been is that my position is that this is a limited piece of property that the city owns right next to a public works building that, that to us provides a number of services. I know that has been some discussion about other things besides public works of items to be there. I think there's been a discussion of what about a future police station, maybe fire station. I don't know, but that's what the facilities group or that group is supposed to be coming back with thoughts and recommendation. And I think, and before I feel like going out, and I'm not saying that maybe in a couple of months or after the first of the year, once we have all this done in place, maybe it'd still be a good idea. But until we get all the T's crossed and I's dotted, and the commission at that time makes up their mind how they want to proceed with this, then that'll be fine. But right now, we still don't have all the answers. We got a good RFP. We've done our job. The three of us did our job. We've given you a great RFP that could be used on anyone. So I'm not ready to move forward with this. And so with that, unless I hear a motion, I think we'll just let it sit on the table for a while and wait for the next things to move on. So, or we could be here all night just running around in a circle.
As I've said before, I think that despite the amount of time and energy that's been devoted to this project, it seems to uncover more and more reasons why this is less than ideal. And now that we find that Fish Pass is unexpectedly, but I'm very hopeful we'll be moving forward. I don't want to end up messing up the timeline that can actually get going. Yes, there's a possibility that we can find other locations for that laydown, but if we are uncertain about proceeding in the first place, and there could be time that it takes to change that aspect of the contract, I would like to at least allow Fish Pass to proceed in the intervening time.
Good. Thank you. All right. Anything else? Okay. Thanks for the discussion. I'm sure it's not going to be the last discussion on this down the road. Okay. Thank you. Next item is our zoning ordinance amendments that we discussed, I believe, last week which we did discuss at our study session. We have 6 items, that have been laid out for us in our packet. It's also on our agendas, but the same items are in our packet at the same time. About the 6 areas of zoning changes that have been brought to us by the Planning Commission. The question of it, and they're all going to be treated as separate items tonight. There's not, we don't either say all or nothing or whatever, but they're each individual items. I will hope that we will either say, yes, we want to move forward with this by having an introduction memorandum for us in 2 weeks to move forward with them. But I wanted, and we went through all this last week, and I want to make sure that we're prepared to either move forward with this or not move forward with this. I'm going to be honest with you, in my last week, I've come into with hearing everything and getting my open memo from a friend of mine out there that was in the paper, which I didn't realize that we did open letters to the paper, but that's fine. But, so we also got to read on Sunday about a new group out there that's, of 5 individuals. I can't make up my mind whether this is worth the fight right now. It'd be one thing, if a tall building was one thing, I was dealing with an ordinance that was in place. These are new ordinances. But I'm going to follow the lead, whatever y'all would like to do. The only item I do not want to have to consider, at least on one, is item number 7, which to me seems like I read more about accessory dwelling units. I don't think we need to deal with any parts of them. Let that item rest on the table until a later date. So that's
You mean item 6?
Is it item 6 or item 7?
There is
There's
no item 7.
Okay, that causes more confusion, but it's item 6. So there you go. But that's my position. So we can take them individually. So item 1, which is increased density in the R2 districts. And the 2 major items that deal with that is to allow triplexes and allow quadplexes. Now, I know at the last meeting, you had a concern about the quads or some.
Yeah,
Okay.
but the form of these things.
Yeah.
I met this week with Sean Winter and Dave Weston and the chairperson of the Historic Commissions, who is an architect, and another planner that had been writing to us, and we all agreed that if we're moving forward on this, we should have some form-based, some easy-to-follow form-based decisions, particularly about the height and also the lot size. And so we want to establish a difference in how high a peaked roof can be versus a flat roof, which is one of the things that people find distasteful, to have too much mass next to them. And once that gets established, hopefully that will help a great deal. We're talking, right now, the peaked roof is 35 feet, and we're talking about 20, 25 feet for a flat roof. We're also concerned about not having someone buy up three plots and have a building be too wide, or the lot be too wide. And so those were the two things that Sean said he was going to be working with the Planning Commission to talk about ways to mitigate those two concerns. And so I was
But they won't
happy
be
about that.
ready before.
But they won't be ready, and that's what I said. They won't
So-
be ready, so what do we do with that? And I wanted to ask Lauren about that. If we move ahead on this one, can we have a date? You know, is there a way to say, yes, we'll be fine with this if we get these standards? I mean, how can you do that? We looked at the calendar. We're not sure we can get, or not we, Sean isn't sure that he can get that done and passed and what needs to happen.
Once again,
by
that
the-
takes,
Yeah, by the
public hearing?
October 18th.
it will not, well, no, you got to have it done by the end of October, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
I mean, could potentially there be an effective date of, and pick a number, May 1st of 2024? Or do we usually make things effective immediately?
Yeah, so I think that the best way to do that, most likely, and I know the commission kind of talked about referring things back to the planning commission, but would be to refer that back to the planning commission and say, we'd like to see, because it's going to have to go back through that whole public hearing process. So I think the best way to do that would be to send it back to them on the initial and say, these are the concerns that we'd like to see addressed, or your feedback on those, before we move on that one. That would be the cleanest way to do it.
If I may, I am pleased to hear that design standard conversation is kind of is coming up. I'm not comfortable passing something that has an imaginary date out there that we might work through with maybe some ideas with it. I think we can have the planning commission go through the process they're already planning to with the design elements. And if the commission at that time and the planning commission at that time decides they want to bring back the triplexes and quadplexes with that lens, so be it. But I think we all kind of said at the beginning of this at the last meeting that we didn't want to refer things back and keep dragging out. These are going to be, are we dealing with them or are we not dealing with them? And then that's up to the next commissions. And so I think I personally wouldn't want to go through with triplexes and quadplexes right now anyways.
Okay. So that one's off the table. That's what I'm hearing. I'm not hearing anyone want to move. Planning Commission may need to deal with it, and they can deal with it. The next Planning Commission after November can deal with that. If they want to bring that back to the next City Commission, they can do that too. Okay.
That makes me sad, but.
Yeah.
No, but we
I-
said
I mean, that was going to provide a lot of housing.
I'd be interested in moving forward with it, but
Yeah.
if I am one
Okay.
vote out of
I'll be
7,
glad to entertain a motion. I said I'm going to entertain a motion whether we move item 1 forward or don't move it forward. You wanted to treat these separately,
Yeah.
so.
yeah.
I would move that we do consider item 1, increasing density in the R2 district, if and only if we could have the design standards in place.
We won't
But
have
we
that.
can't.
We
Yeah.
can't.
Right, so then I guess we can't.
Okay.
Okay.
We won't have that.
Okay.
And one of the things that we said, we're not going to lay this in the next City Commission's lap, saying, oh, this is coming at you. Not fair. Okay. All right.
There is something to be said for the pattern book home approaches. I'm probably going to reference it in further subsequent discussions, but as both the city of South Bend has done, and both the MML, at Michigan Municipal League, and Michigan Association of Planners have been developing for Michigan to have essentially pre-approved blueprints for given housing types, say a triplex, that would already meet aspects of our zoning code. And even without a sense of design standards, the fact that we would have a pre-approved plan that, yes, you can tweak some aspects of it, but that would make it significantly easier for a developer to come through and build that house rather than building something that would clash with our overall neighborhood, but we do not have that design
We
standard
don't have
or
that yet,
book
and that is a project that's in the works. But again, that's another tool that we have to wait for, but it's not here yet. I agree with you.
And yes, if we had it, then
Different-
it would allow
It could be a different
developer
question
to make
tonight.
something that does not clash with our neighborhood character.
That's right. But we don't have that at this point. Okay.
I guess.
All right.
I was heartened to hear that the chair of the Historic Commission, District Commission, was in support of all of these. And when I said I'm afraid that if we put this out there without that extra
Yeah.
piece, it's gonna, it's not gonna be accepted. And the group at the table all agreed that it would be ready before anyone was ready to present a design to the city on this. I too am uneasy about that, but it's with great regret that I lose this if we don't follow through.
Sorry, just,
Please.
you'll say I'm just being a troublemaker, but one thing to toss out, it only opens it a sliver is to allow these, but only on minimum lot widths. So chances are nobody will build it because it's on a minimum lot width.
Yeah.
But then it's established, and it might be easier to make the modifications spoken of in the future.
And it would be essentially providing this a foothold in the zoning code that then can be amended at a later point rather than creating an entirely new aspect of zoning code.
I think it's complicated enough that having the planning commission revisit it is probably the right thing.
If they want to revisit it.
They will.
Okay.
They should. They
They
should.
should.
I'm in support.
I'll leave that into the planning commission's hands. Okay. So item 1 is something that we do not desire to move forward at this time. Item 2 was increased density in the R1 AB districts, allow duplexes by right.
Yes.
We already have dozens of duplexes in our R1 district. As Sean pointed out, much of our R1 formerly allowed 2 dwelling units, and then we scaled that back.
All right. All right. So I see nods up and down. That's one we like to consider, continue to consider. Okay.
We need a motion for that, or are we
Yes,
just?
I'd like to have a motion.
I'd like to move that we move forward to increase density in the R1 AB district by allowing duplexes by right.
Okay.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion, support. Well, of course, seeing we're taking these individually, more discussion by the commission, but I'll open up for public comment, but only for this topic only. Don't bring up any other ones. You'll get your chance, please. Yes.
Just a quick comment on process, like this is an extra layer that's been added, and we don't normally vote, because then we're talking about an introduction at a September 18th
You know what?
meeting, which we then vote to say, yes, we want to actually have a meeting to discuss the
Right.
meat of it, and then vote on it. So we're potentially voting on it 3 times, like counting down, this is 3, then there's 2, then there's 1. So doesn't even say that, it just says, yeah, let's keep it in the mix for now. It doesn't mean that I'm going to vote for it on the 18th or on whatever next date it is. It's just, yeah, let's keep it in the mix for now. And we've already decided without voting that we're not keeping item 1 in the mix for now. So we could do it by consensus, but if the attorney's amenable to it, we can also do it with this vote
Which would you
that's
rather
being
do it?
shared.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you. I think it is crystal clear for staff if you vote on each item.
Yeah.
And just so that I'm crystal clear, what we are going to do with these motions is go back and create the ordinance language that would enact that particular item that is desired to move forward, bring that back to the commission with the actual language at the September 18th meeting for you to discuss, consider, and introduce if you wish.
Okay, that's fair enough. Thank you. Okay. You'll hang on 1 second, sir. I'm not ready.
He's almost ready.
I'm almost ready, so you just hang on. Any other questions or thoughts from up here? Yeah, I want to make sure I had all this up here first. Yes, sir, please. If you got others, now let's make sure we talk about this topic and this topic only, please.
And I just wanted to add to the instructions for public comment that I stated earlier that, of course, this is an issue that is very intense for a lot of people. There's feelings that are very strong, and we want to create an atmosphere where everyone feels comfortable speaking. And for that reason, I ask that there be no reaction whatsoever from the audience to comments made, and we ask that you direct your comments to the City Commission and that you keep them respectful. Thank you.
Yes. My name is Zachary Ray, 210 Oak, Traverse City resident. And what I'm presenting is kind of a blanket statement. I know it's one by one, but it doesn't make that much sense, right? So,
well, then, so you're making a blanket statement for everything, sir?
no, this is about like housing, right?
Okay, so you're making a general overall statement.
I'm making a statement to ask you to keep something, to keep mindful of a few things.
Yeah.
Yeah?
It's your 3 minutes.
Okay. All right, so this is about housing, the zoning, all this 1 through 6, whatever, it's about housing, right? And I want to consider, we're talking about zoning. There's a few things that we can do. We can add inclusionary zoning that mandates the percentage of the new units or developments be reserved for affordable housing. This will ensure mixed income communities and benefit our residents in need. We can add rental restrictions by limiting the number of days a property can be rented short-term annually. We can keep the focus on housing our residents rather than serving vacation goers. We can add affordability convents to these, where we can implement legal agreements tied directly to property deeds, ensuring that units remain affordable for years to come. And we can add tax incentives, of course, which you've already done previously. But lastly, we must be prepared to enforce these policies with penalties for those who violate the housing short-term rental regulations. That's all I really got to say.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, anyone else like to speak about item number 2, which is increased density for the R1 by allowing duplexes by right? Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Hi, Heather Shaw, 655 West Orchard Drive, former Planning Commission. I agree that this is a viable density building tool, and it results in minimal physical interruptions in your neighborhoods. But as the master plan draft housing chapter states, it's important to not only increase the supply of housing, but ensure that the housing supply increases are felt equitably across all income and demographic groups. The Association for Neighborhood and Housing Development has found that a blanket rezoning, which is what this is, have the potential to cause more harm than good in neighborhoods with low-income communities. People have started with site rezonings on this. So you choose a neighborhood and you work with just a neighborhood to see what happens. Be aware that in Wawa, Washington, they did exactly the same blanket rezoning, and their median price of a home jumped from $300,000 to $500,000 in 1 year. Also, I really think you need to look at form-based code or some kind of design codes in this too, or you're going to get homes that are, the parking is right on the street. You know, you can talk about getting parking on the first floor underneath the buildings, or some kind of street frontage language in the ordinance that so that you don't get cars parked right on your sidewalk. Also, I still think that building width and depth needs to be addressed so you get predictable results. You can end up with some really wild stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. What else? Okay.
Sam Flamont, 1719 Apache Pass, Traverse City resident. I've spoken numerous times up here about the need for housing and what housing will do. Supply and demand is an obvious thing. We all know that. It's a simple economic concept. When we have more housing, the prices will shift. I think this one, item 2, is one of the most important ones we can focus on for a few reasons. It's the quickest way to get more housing, because there are a lot of splittable lots in the R1 region where there's not a lot in the R2. there is a lot of lots that are double the lot size where you could build a smaller unit on, and yes, people are active in this community. There are people looking for smaller living units, and therefore, those will create that price point that everybody is hoping to get. I'm not saying it's going to be 200 or 199, but you're not going to build, I mean, currently right now, things in the 750, 2-bed, 1-bath, 2-bed, 2-bath are selling for 2 to 250 over in the Traverse Heights neighborhood. Sorry, excuse me. But what this will do is it'll create an opportunity for both more rentals and more ownership. And because of that, if you have more rentals, you have more competition, you will affect rental prices, and they will have to come down. If you add a bunch of apartments, which we're adding now, and you add a bunch of duplexes, rental prices will come down. Also, what will happen is rental prices come down, people like myself who own a rental, so this will negatively affect me, which I'm still in support of it. I will have to look at this and say, do I keep my house as a rental because now it's barely covering my mortgage, or do I sell my house, therefore creating more owner occupants? Also, I've talked to numerous people who own duplexes in the city with the idea that they bought that duplex down the road to be able to condo dock these things side by side and then sell them as single-family homes, also creating more ownership possibilities. So there's both sides to this coin, good and bad, but housing units never hurt. I stood up here last week and 18 months ago talking about short-term rentals and how we're going to build too many, and they're going to create long-term housing. Trailside 45 has been the biggest topic of this, and at the rate it's going, Trailside 45 will be a full-time living community again within 3 to 5 years. There are people I know personally that could make more money if they rented those things out month to month or by a year rather than minimums. And if you look at that, that building has drastically come up for sale. I mean, people have already bought them for less than a year. They've owned less than a year. They're already selling them again, and they're sitting because they paid too much. There's going to be more housing because there's more units, ownership and rental. You create competition, prices will come down, and this one will create the competition fast enough to actually make a difference.
Anybody else?
Yeah, to help expedite public comment, if you want to speak on this item, I request that you stand in line behind the podium so you don't have to wait for folks to get over there. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michael Goodall. I own 3 properties within the city limits. 2 of them are in the R1A and R1B district. One is in Grand Traverse Commons. Address is 703 South Union is one, 117 East 16th Street is the other. I'm in full support of this as it's written, and I want to let you know my support as a property owner in Traverse City and a business owner. Thank you.
Justin Reed, 638 Cottage Drive, Apartment 1B, Traverse City, Michigan, State resident. I'd like to have item 1 voted on because I'd like to see who's supporting number 1. I think instead of skipping that and going to voting for number 2, I'd say vote for number 1 to see who's going to amend that motion to support or to take it off table. Thank you.
Commissioners, I'm Mike Allenson. I live at 2213 Eastern Avenue. I've been a resident of Traverse City for about 50 years. I've lived in my home for about 45 years. My entire career has reflected my commitment to obeying the law.
Sir, Mike, would you please talk more into the mic? People at home can't hear you. Thank you, sir.
I've been a volunteer in the community for decades, including serving on one of the city's commissions for about 16 years. I volunteered for charitable organizations. These aspects of my life reflect my commitment to my community. I am not motivated by money. Let me tell you the bottom line of my position. to continually slice and dice Traverse City lot sizes, house sizes, setbacks. This just has to stop. To have automatic availability of duplexes anywhere in residential districts has to stop. Packing people in continuously has to stop. There must be a protection of the quality of our life. In my neighborhood, there's some weird scenarios where there's a house, two-story house that takes up almost the entire lot side. There was a small backyard. The backyard has a two-story garage. It's goofy. There's a single-family home next to me, not a duplex. It's owned by an out-of-town owner who shows up only in the summer. When he shows up, that house has an RV, a scamper camper, 2 boats, motors, and trailers, 5, 6, or 7 cars, and often 4 dogs, and the people that go along with all those cars. There is nothing to protect me, nothing in zoning. So anything that you folks are considering doing in terms of increasing density or packing people in, I'm absolutely opposed to it. And I want to say this about removing restrictions, like making it easier for duplexes and stuff. When you do that sort of thing, ordinary folks are going to be outbid by investors, out-of-town developers, and eventually Wall Street hedge funds. If they're not here yet, they will be. Those types of entities don't care about our community. I do. Folks.
Mr. Ellenson, thank you for your comments. Your 3 minutes have elapsed. Thank you.
Thanks, Benjamin.
Hi, I'm Teresa Scullin. I'm a city resident at 437 Hamilton Street. Thanks for the opportunity to comment. I'm concerned about this item. My concern about this item is the same as my concerns for the other items, in that this package has short-circuited or precedes the results of the master planning process. And I don't understand the rush to get this into code, especially when it is something as drastic as by right, which cannot be opposed. I share the previous commenter's concern that the ordinary citizen would be outbid by big people with deep pockets. Thank you.
Hi, Eliza Stocio. I reside at 807 West 7th Street. I am lucky enough to live in Traverse City, and I work in Traverse City. I just want to make it clear that, like, affordable housing, by affordable housing we mean the workforce of Traverse City. The, restaurant workers, the retail workers, like, I would like to see more people who work in Traverse City be able to live here and not have to drive, an hour or two just to support the rich people that have condos here that are, here for 2 months out of the year. I would like to know really what is the intention of the rezoning? Who does it benefit? I'm not opposed to short-term rentals. I think that they are good for our economy, but I think that there does need to be a cap, and there does need to be more affordable housing for the people working here. I also would like to know what the agency is that will be reviewing and enforcing the rules for housing that we potentially build. And do they have enough, like, workforce power to enforce the rules? That's it.
Just for the record, would you mind repeating your last name for me?
Stocio.
Dosia. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi guys, I'm back. I'm Taryn. I'm from Kingsley, Michigan. Taryn Indish, sorry. And today we come together as a community to discuss a pivotal moment in our town's growth and progress. I want to address the heartfelt concerns raised by some who question whether our efforts to upgrade zoning regulations truly put the needs of the people first. I also want to firmly stand behind these zoning upgrades and passionately urge the Commission to incorporate measures that empower our community. Let's start by acknowledging the legitimate concerns of those in opposition. Trust in our community's development has been tested in the past, leaving some understandably skeptical. We all want the same thing, a thriving community that retains its unique character while ensuring that housing genuinely benefits its people. That's where we find our common ground. We share a collective vision of a community that puts people at its core and ensures that housing is accessible and affordable for those who live and work here. It is vital we are coupling these zoning upgrades with inclusionary zoning measures. They ensure that our town remains a place where everyone can afford to live, not just the fortunate few. Our support for these zoning upgrades is not driven by profit motives, but rather by our unwavering commitment to a better future for our people. However, we also understand the concerns of the oppositions. Commissioners, I urge you to recognize this lack of trust and work hand in hand with our community to include measures in this proposal that empowers everyone. I passionately urge the Commission to add inclusionary zoning measures to their proposal, joining hands with our people-powered movement. By supporting these changes, you're not just shaping policies, you're changing lives. You're paving the way for a more inclusive, sustainable future where individuals like me can thrive and continue to make a positive impact. One step in the right direction for people like me just trying to make it. I urge each member of the Commission to remember that this issue reaches beyond statistics. It touches the lives and aspirations of people who are committed to this community's well-being. By voting in favor of the proposed zoning amendments, you're not only acknowledging the struggles faced by individuals like me, you're also creating a brighter future for Traverse City, one that is truly equitable and sustainable. Let's unite and build a city where affordable housing is a reality for every member, where our community's future is shaped by the people, for the people. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carrie Noga, and I live at 442 Hamilton Street, and my husband and I have owned that property, which sits on a double lot, for 20 years. I am in favor of number 2. Thank you for the chance to speak tonight. I've advocated for what was then called gentle infill to the Planning and Zoning Commission back on October 28th, 2020, almost 3 years ago. I'm here tonight to continue that advocacy, underscoring 4 points. I do support number 2. I'm jumping ahead a bit due to my own time constraints. But first, most personally to me, please advance item 4, allowing a second home on a lot that I believe it means to say without a split on there. It says with a split, but I believe it should say without a split. So please correct that and advance that. And as I said, that is my personal situation. Second, I'd like to request that you remember that you represent all of Traverse City. We don't have districts in our community. You're all at large. You're representing all of our citizens. That includes homeowners and renters. I feel that renters have been unjustly scapegoated in the process over the last several months. I happen to be part of a small group that is seeking to create a neighborhood association in my own Triangle neighborhood. And we've looked at parcel data in our neighborhood. 34% of our neighborhood's 139 residential buildings don't have a primary residence exemption. In other words, they are renters. And yet I believe every single one of the homeowners there would say they love our neighborhood and they love our proximity to the Civic Center and our trees, and the renters are a part of that. And I urge you to remember that you represent them as well. I'd also like to caution you to beware of generalizations. There was a criticism a few moments ago and in other meetings about so-called blanket changes. With 85% of the city currently zoned single-family right now, I would suggest that we already have a blanket. Lastly, I would like you to not put off these decisions until after the November election. You are the duly elected citizens, duly elected leaders of our community right now. This is a housing situation that has been building for quite some time. As I mentioned, I spoke on this nearly 3 years ago. Please don't delay it any further. Let's see. And lastly, I guess unrelated to this particular package.
Ms. Noga, I want to thank you for your comments. Your 3 minutes have elapsed. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
Jack Langford, 5th Street, city resident. I am just here, again, you guys are faced with a very difficult decision. It is a very large zoning change, and I understand the other side of the concern of character of neighborhood, of preventing big developers from coming in and building tasteless buildings that don't serve our city. But I'd like to urge you as a 21-year-old young adult who has lived here his entire life and now has to move away. At some point, it's becoming more and more inevitable. I have served this community, I've worked in this community. I've been in a rental for the past 3.5 years, and it's the only rental I could find that was within my budget for 3.5 years, and I have been looking in the 5-county area. In 3.5 years, I've only had 13 apartments that were within my budget, and all of them filled up quickly. I've also worked at many places where I've lost some of my best coworkers because they couldn't find a place to live. People like nurses, childcare workers, grocery stockers, all the positions we like to forget about, but you can't have a society without. It's usually young adults filling them, and when young adults don't have a place to live and they're not treated well, renters are not treated well in this area. The apartment I'm in is a house that's been turned into 4 apartments. I have been left death notes on my car because people know I'm a renter in 5th Street. I have been told that I am not welcome here, and that a day later I turn around and I'm the one that's greeting their children at a child care center, or I'm the one that's smiling them at a retail store. So I have seen so many talented young adults pick up and leave, leaving our workforce in shambles because they can't find a place to live. So I understand how difficult this decision is to make. I cannot stress the urgency of figuring out solutions for housing and moving those along, as we are losing our young adult and our workforce housing, which means we won't have a workforce. It's already scary going to Munson right now and waiting hours to go to the ER. What do you want to be next? Thank you.
Could I request a 30-second warning?
Sure, you bet.
All right, thank you. Why the rush?
Please introduce yourself.
Paul Wilkins, 610 North Madison Street. Does my time start now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Why the rush? What's going to change? Was the City Planning Commission bullied into passing this? During the planning session, or excuse me, the planning committee meeting, I watched one of the commissioners get up and say, "Be bold, pass it. It doesn't have to be unanimous. Be bold, give it to us." It was almost like he was urging them and pushing it. How controversial. You had the chair step down because he didn't feel that it had the public opinion it needed. You had another person step down because they felt it was rubber stamped. It's being rushed. Now, another person indicated that it's been being discussed for 3 years, but let's remind each other, for the last 3 years, we've had COVID. We haven't had a chance for public comment or public discussion. I think you're rushing it through. I do agree with a lot of these changes, but I think they need to be baked a little bit further. Boil them, cook them a little bit, massage them. How can you look at some duplexes on by right, and oh, by the way, let me remind you that at the beginning of the meeting, you were trapped into agreeing by right that that property owner would do that. These changes need to be thought about thoughtfully, thoroughly, with consideration of what's going to happen when you build a 124 Oak Street box as a duplex crammed into Slabtown. Old Town, I think, has some restrictions. Slabtown doesn't have any restrictions. It says ADUs or duplexes have to have the same pitch as the neighborhood. They can build a box. What would be the height requirements? Again, why the rush? What seems to be the hurry? I would commend you to listen to your constituents. Mayor Lewis, you said, I'll go along with what the committee. I would think that you're going to vote to represent your constituents, the people that elected you and put faith in you, not to go along with the committee. I would commend you to do that.
I work with my commissioners.
Of
We
course,
represent
but
all.
you'd also vote to support,
Both
not
for
to see which
and
way the wind's
against.
blowing.
I
I
vote,
thought this was my time, sir.
I give you extra 30 seconds.
Thank you. All right. I would commend you to vote for your constituents. I hope that you're voting to represent the wishes of the people that elected you. They put their faith in you. By the way, the city commission, I believe that your objective is to preserve and develop, with an emphasis on preserve, since it's the first one mentioned. I would hope that you will preserve it. You might need to tweak these proposals. They're not ready to be moved forward. Send them back to the planning commission where they belong, all of them, so they can be looked at thoroughly.
Got
with public
30
comment.
seconds left.
Thank you. Be bold by being accountable to your constituents. Be bold by being thorough. Be bold by not rushing. Be bold by listening. Thank you.
Gary Schilke, 421 Webster Street, Traverse City residents. Thank you for listening. And I have three questions I'd like to put on the table related to these individual proposals. First, I want to acknowledge that I give you credit for being city commissioners, and I appreciate it. I think that it's hard to take criticism, and somehow you stay there and you take criticism and you keep on going. Secondly, I think it's hard to be a city commissioner because you have to, in making a decision, on the one hand, you've got your constituents that you're thinking of representing, that you want to represent. And on the other hand, you have to make, you sometimes may make decisions that go against the grain because you feel it's the right thing to do. So my three questions are, one, do you know what the majority of the residents feel on these amendments individually? Two, if you did know what they felt, would you vote in accordance with them? And the third question is, whatever your decision that you make, are you sure you're right about it? On making decisions, Davy Crockett said, be sure you're right, then go ahead. And for the sake of the Traverse City residents and our neighborhoods, when you do make your decision, I hope you're right.
Hello, my name is Grant Parsons, 6936 Mission Ridge. Not a city resident, but I'm a city property owner at 520 South Union. First of all, I want to commend you for changing the layout by removing item number 1 tonight. It does indicate that you're thinking about these issues, and you've done some more thinking recently, and I appreciate that. That's good faith government. In regard to number 2, the increase in density in the R1AB district, generally speaking, I oppose densification of neighborhoods because I think neighborhoods are the lifeblood and the character of the city. They make our brand, they make our image. They're what the tourism, we say tourism casually, but tourism comes here for something different. They come here for Traverse City, and Traverse City isn't going to be Traverse City if you over-densify it. So I'm against on that general purpose. But listening to Liza and the woman who spoke about
Please direct your comments to the
I'm sorry.
commission. Thank
I was
you.
trying to remember what her how to refer to. Anyway, the two people, young people talking, or maybe three, about inclusiveness. I'd suggest this is a golden opportunity, and when you come back, and the city attorney indicated she's going to draft more specific details on this number 2 issue next time. You include some possible innovation about duplexes. If you really want to make affordable housing, why don't you incentivize by saying, if we go to duplex, if you make a duplex, we'll cut your property taxes. If you keep your rental price low. Why don't you make each individual duplex owner part of these pilot or subsidies, all these subsidy programs you're thinking about? Incentivize affordable housing by including an incentive to make them truly affordable. Otherwise, I think the comments are accurate that say all you're going to do by allowing increased density is you're going to allow increased speculation, increased developer pressure, and you're going to move individuals out. So if you're going to do something and the devil's in the details, you're going to bring it back in October, bring it back with some innovative thinking and explanations why the duplex adds sense not only for renters but for property owners who are afraid of what you're about to do with densification to their equity. Thank you very much.
Hi, Rick Buckhalter, 932 Kelly Street. I'm a Traverse City resident. I just watched some of the comments from home before I came up here. But I have to say, if the city attorney is going to do possibly 6 ordinances on this, that's 6 different referendums. Except you can't do referendums on zoning. So that leaves one other choice. And what you do later in September isn't as important as what you might do in October. And if we're going into the October meeting thinking that we're going to get stabbed in the back, we'll probably react in a way that you won't be happy with. So think about this. A lot of people are talking on both sides of this issue. You've never, ever tried to find out using the internet or emails or anything what the majority of Traverse City residents who use the city email, hopefully they're residents where they can provide their resident address, and find out what the majority of people think. That would be an indicator of how right or wrong it is for what you're doing. But I ask you to think about this. Starting from now until something got built that was adverse to a neighborhood, you don't know how many rentals you need or residents you need. There's no logic or reason to why you're doing this. You can't answer the question. We are doing this because we need blah rentals in the city limit. We need blah, blah, blah new types of housing in the city limit. You don't know why. This is just new urbanism. So I want you to think about this when you have your discussions. If you send this back to Planning Commission, I think you already got a feeling what people think about the current membership. And secondly, I want you to think that the planning director started a meeting off by saying he contacted only 2 of the neighboring townships and found out that there are current plans or they are in construction 4,000 residential units. He didn't say whether they're rentals, didn't say whether they're condos, didn't say anything. But you need to track down that number and compare it in your mind what you think needs to be in the Traverse City limit. This just doesn't make any sense. Thank you.
Hi, Margaret Shaw, property owner and resident of Traverse City for a number of years. 1403 North Orchard is my address. And I'm not particularly in favor of duplexes by right. I don't think it's particularly right the way it is now. I think you abandoned item number 1 because it wasn't as specific. It didn't have some things, it didn't address some questions that you still had. I think you may still have some questions about what a duplex could be in neighborhoods. I think Mr. Parsons had some very good issues about it's sort of an idea. You don't have some language that may help contribute to solving what you want it to solve. If it's going to be affordable housing that you want, how does just throwing up a duplex on any R1 lot, how does that accomplish that? And as one person said, there aren't all that many places where you could do that. So are all that not to bring prices down to be affordable? I think you have maybe an idea, but not really a plan. So batten down some hatches. You got some good ideas, but it looks like you have a little bit more detail in the planning to get it right.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Rick Zahner. I live at 516 6th Street here in Traverse City. Been at that address for over 50 years. I was a real estate broker for over 25 years. And after listening to everybody talk tonight and so forth, I had 3 or 4 pages written here, and I'm going to try to shorten this up a little bit. Planning changes have come and they've gone. Government has a tendency to overchange. For whose benefit? It appears that government needs to stay out of the way of majority property owners. Affordable housing, what is that you say? Affordable housing in the early to mid 70s in these old neighborhoods was a stretch for a family. Most of those old houses were sold for less than what a husband and wife earned in a year or two. Think about that. If you had a combined income of, say, $15,000, now that doesn't sound like very much money today, but back then that was a lot of money. My wife taught school, and she was lucky to make $5,000, $6,000 her first year, her second year, or third year. You might be able to save 20% down, $6,000 to $12,000. That's a stretch, because everything was becoming more expensive because of inflation. 1973 and later years, and look at where it is today. Look at inflation. You had to reach out and sacrifice. There were no shortcuts. The government was going to change the rules to make it easier. They weren't going to change the rules to make it easier, and life isn't easier because the rules are changed. If you look at closely, you will find that every time you make a change, it costs you. And you, as the fathers of the city, you understand that more than anybody. Every time you make a change, it costs you more bucks, and you don't know if it's going to be worth the payment or not. It appears as though you have the cart in front of the horse. The current infrastructure does not support our current demands. The city sewer and water needs to be corrected before you try to bring additional population into this city. A lot of our streets are covered with patched potholes, and you want more traffic on them? Bikers are certainly not happy dodging those areas. Infrastructure. Developers do not want to incur the cost of the needed infrastructure.
Thank you for your comments. Your time's elapsed, but before you go, would you just repeat for me, please, your name and address?
My name is Richard Zahner, Zehner, 516 6th Street.
Thank you very much.
Yes, my name is Dr. Christopher Crane, and actually I live at 10240 East 22 Road, Manton, Michigan, so I'm not a resident of the city, I'm a resident of the Wexford County. Now, being what many see as an outsider, this is still an important situation, conditions that you're addressing at this time, because Traverse City happens to be, as we all know, a center to this region, its economy, and everything else. So your leadership in this is very important. Now, there's a number of things. I didn't prepare a statement. I'm an anthropologist. I'm an academic, so I'm not going to be long-winded tonight. And because the number of people have presented on both sides a lot of information, most eloquently, they have their information in order, et cetera, so forth. The only thing I'm concerned about, especially when we get sometimes bogged down in details, is we forget the human element involved. And that human element is basically about observing what both groups are saying. All right, that's an oversimplification of the situation maybe in many ways, but it helps. It comes down to one thing. People are worried. They're concerned. They're fearful. They're fearful of such things as, again, quality of life, the loss of quality of life, the ability to attain quality of life. They're worried about affordability. They're worried also about things like community, okay? So again, these all have to be addressed. Now, how you go about that again? Incremental steps, progressive steps, as many are saying, in one way or the other, that seems to be well supported, and that's fine. The whole fact is, take some time if you have to, but make some sort of progress. The issues involving homelessness, the issues involving housing, while it's Traverse City you're talking about mainly, it affects everything else. Just lately, 9 and 10 News just provided, and they ran a story last week, that was talking about senior citizens and affordability in Cadillac. All right, worried about some of the aspects of the same things that you were discussing. So again, if you have to take some time, affordability issues, all right. Now, some might not be aware, some of you may be aware that there's a push right now to actually remove the state preemptive law banning local city governments from having some form of rent control. If somebody would like to talk to me about that later, please do. I'll stay around for a while. So just think about that. I don't envy you being in a political position or a position of decision-making in any society. Is hard because it's like the weatherman many times. When you get it right, nobody remembers. When you get it wrong, everybody curses your name. And then that right and wrong is quite subjective in its own right. Thank you
for your comments. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kelly Kinsler. I live at 146 East 15th Street in Traverse City, Michigan, and I'm a Traverse City resident. I see both sides of this topic. A couple of questions I do have would be, can the current infrastructure support the adding of duplexes? Are all the utilities able to maintain that? Parking and increased traffic. I ride my bike. That's one of the things I love about Traverse City, is being able to ride your bike or walk into town. So would the added traffic impede that? Also, changes in aesthetics to the local neighborhoods. I like the ideas of having the design committee adjust topic 1 and provide more details with that. I think that's important. The aesthetic is one of the reasons why I purchased land in Traverse City, was for the charm. So in conclusion, I see both sides, but I think there needs to be some tweaks, or not tweaks, just thinking through a couple of these potential issues that could arise with adding duplexes by right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, yes.
Mayor, I'd like to ask, given that most comments are about housing in general, I'm not sure, I think we should go through this list and then ask for more since we're not voting on anything tonight, this is just about moving it forward. Do you think that would be a more efficient use of everyone's time?
Well, we do have a motion on the table in a second as it relates to item 2, and we can go through the rest of them. But we said we wanted to treat each one of them singularly, so, okay. We have a motion in support, I believe, correct?
Correct.
That we'd like to move forward with item number 2, which increases density in the R1 AB district. Any other questions from up here? Yes, sir.
Just a reminder comment, because much time has transpired. So this just indicating we're moving it from that, like 3 times to vote, from this time to the next time, which we'll still have to say, yep, but now we want to advance it to this time, which is when the actual decision is made. So by supporting it right now, we're just saying we want to keep it in the mix.
That's all we're
Still
doing.
opportunities for changes, still opportunities to vote no in the future. We're just saying if we vote yes, at least for me, and I do intend to vote yes, it's just I want to keep it in the mix for now.
That is correct. Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Item 3 was cluster housing modifications. Both the two key items in this particular area is reduce minimum lot size from 5 acres to 1 and switch from a city commission SLUP to an administrative SLUP. I don't know how many of these that would ever,
I believe there's only one in the city.
only one place in the
isn't
city.
that right?
It's charming, and it's in Slabtown, and it delights me every time I walk past it.
And it wasn't actually developed under our current cluster housing ordinance. It predates
So
that.
there is no other places that this could take place?
Well, that's the one
There
that
are no
exists.
5-acre parcels that meet these criteria, but there are a dozen or so 1-acre parcels
Okay.
if we made this change.
All right, and where is this located up in Slabtown?
It's at the north end of Monroe Street.
North end of Monroe
I'm sorry,
Street.
south end, toward Front Street.
It's
Okay.
at Jefferson and Monroe on the southeast corner.
Thank you.
And what sits on it now?
I think it's 4 or 5.
That's all. Make sure we're speaking in the mics. I'm hearing people.
Okay, I just want, in case people want to go see what one looks like up in Slabtown.
So it's on Jefferson and Monroe at the southeast corner. There are 4 or 5 houses around the corner, and they have a shared garage on the alley and a common backyard.
I'll just say that this is personally my favorite of them since it doesn't seem to get much attention, and as I mentioned last week, in the hundreds of emails that we've gotten, it's only been mentioned specifically in 3 emails, and 2 of them that mentioned what they thought were cluster housing was actually not, because in both cases the lot was less than half an acre, so it wouldn't even qualify under this.
Okay.
And I remember last year being at a Michigan Planning Association conference or meeting, and somebody had specifically mentioned that they thought that our director, Sean Winter, had done a great job with his draft language, and at that point, I was disappointed to come back and tell him, hey, somebody else saw your draft language for cluster housing, and they thought that that was a good model to emulate. But it's been more than a year before that draft language actually makes it to the city commission, and we have a chance to vote on it. I think that it allows a lot more opportunity, not to provide a whole lot of housing, since we're still talking about a dozen or so properties scattered across Traverse City, but in those properties where there is wetland, where there is grade issues, where there might be sensitive habitat or other reasons that you don't want to develop a part of a larger parcel, it allows the other part of the parcel to be developed with houses that can be slightly closer together.
Okay, I understand what it is. Okay. All right, is this something we want to continue to move forward with for further consideration? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to do that.
I'll make the motion to move item number 3 forward, which is cluster housing modifications. A, reduce the minimum lot size from 5 acres to 1 acre, and B, switch from a city commission SLUP to an administrative SLUP.
Support.
Okay, we got a motion, support. Okay.
And just a really quick comment, sorry, I just thought about this. Sean mentioned, I believe, and I'm kind of checking with my planning people and everybody else, during his presentation, that there's never been an application for administrative SLUP. Is that for this, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Okay, unless there's something new to add, I will open up in case someone wants to talk to this directly, but if you're going to talk generally again, give us a small break. You'll have more time later.
I won't repeat myself. This is
Grant,
something,
Grant, I
Grant
know.
Parsons, 6936 Mission
we-
Ridge. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. This one really caught my eye, and I appreciate the fact that when you hold a public hearing, you actually can learn something. The question I want you to look at is 3B. My concern, you say the cluster housing modification, I don't know if it's good or bad because I don't know enough about it, but let's assume it's good. Now look at B, 3B. It says switch from a city commission SLUP to an administrative SLUP. Now what does that have to do with housing? That has to do with due process. Why are you taking away the public's ability to go before the city commission public hearing and comment on cluster, on anything. You know, a SLUP, what you're talking about here is a project that would have to be done by a SLUP, and under the Zoning Enabling Act, a SLUP has a number of requirements that it must meet prerequisite to being approved, including its effect on the impact of the character, marginal infrastructure costs that it adds, and all those other things. And if you do that at the administrative level, what does that mean? That means you're taking out of the public view, right? Administrators don't hold public hearings, the commission does. I would ask you, Mr. Treadwell, if you love this amendment, if you love this idea, you look at this issue and say, what does this have to do with housing improvement in Traverse City? What it has to do is impairing accountability and transparency of government. So when you come back next time around looking at this, I wish you would reconsider 3B and say, we don't need that. Even if we need cluster housing, we don't need to impair the public's decision accessibility. Thank you.
Anyone else for this particular project?
One more question for me really quick, sorry, and I think it was to go to Lauren. When this comes back for us to consider the actual, would this have the SLUP process that would be tied to this? Or is that something that would have to be figured out after? I'm just curious the order.
It's always the same process.
Okay.
For a
Yes.
special land use permit.
Okay.
There's already in the ordinance, there
Like
is a
12
commission
letters.
process and an administrative process that's already laid out.
Okay,
So,
great.
so we'll have to review it and see if that's what.
Yeah,
is
can we make sure
acceptable.
that's included with the packet? Not that I
Sure.
doubted it, but.
Okay. Thank you. Again, all those in favor of continuing to move this item forward, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay. The next one is 2 parcel dwellings in R1AB and allow,
That's the wrong two.
yes, allow 2 principal dwellings, principal homes on lots that are twice the minimum area without a lot split.
With.
Is that supposed to be without or with?
It's supposed to be without.
Okay.
I don't think that's what I just read in the ordinance language.
I think it's with.
Pardon me?
Yeah, I believe it's with. If you look in the ordinance, let me go back and find it.
I just looked in this.
Since there's no
Yeah.
link to it, can we get this maybe brought back?
Yeah, we'll just, okay, let's skip
Yeah.
this while you look that one up.
Well, I'm,
Okay, item 5 is dimension standard modifications. In most of these, we are lowering the minimum lot widths. We're also reducing the minimum lot area. We're increasing the maximum impervious surface from 30 to 35% in R1A and R1B. So this has to, and also increase the maximum impervious areas from 45 to 50%. So, okay. Any thoughts? In other words, we're kind of, in some ways, we are relaxing some of the restrictions we have, I think, in every one of these.
Well, I can say that in going through all the hundreds of emails, I only received one that even mentioned specifically lot widths.
I would move to advance item 5 with the dimension standard modifications.
Okay.
second.
You got a second from Ms. Shamrow?
I was asking, but sure.
Okay, okay. All right, anyone have any thoughts on this one?
Yes. Grant Parsons, 6936 Mission Ridge. My main concern is not with the minimum, the dimensions. Skip down, if you would, please, to 5E and 5F. In both cases, what the zoning amendment proposal or idea is to increase maximum area from 30% to 35%. Can you, is that I'm getting that right? You're going to increase the impervious area, right?
Mm-hmm.
5%.
So that means you're going to make more runoff, right? I mean,
Nope.
that's what I would like you to, no?
Opposite.
Is it really the opposite?
Yeah, all stormwater needs to be contained on site.
No, the impervious issue, that's what the water can't get through.
Oh, that's correct.
All right, so listen, that's important
That-
around the river and around the bay, correct? And around the environment that, you know, all these E. coli warnings and all this runoff, what we get is not people pooping in the streets. What we get is first flushes across impervious surfaces. And so creating more impervious surfaces means more runoff. Would you please look at this? And you can look at these environmental bricks, these construction bricks that are webs, right? They're not solid. And if you look at putting some innovation into 5E and 5F, you
And
might...
also 5G. on the
Or,
other
I'm sorry, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. You might say, let's be innovative and say, if you want to do this dimension change, you must use impervious mitigation, like, you know, Tim, you know what I'm talking about. I don't know what you call them, but Mr. Werner would know. All right. I appreciate you spending some time to think about this, because water runoff around here with the Boardman River, Boardman Ottaway, and the bay is extremely important. Thank you.
Hi again, Heather Shaw, 655 West Orchard Drive. I am categorically opposed to increasing impervious in our residential districts. You're increasing the undrainable land, and you're also taking away our natural infrastructure of trees that sop up the water. Because by increasing impervious, you're going to decrease trees. Categorically opposed. We have flooding issues all over the city. This is just going to add to that. The lot areas, Daniel Pavlik, who is the guru of missing middle housing, beautiful book, full of diagrams. He says, do not rely on setbacks. You have to look at the building widths and depths. Otherwise, you end up with outsized buildings, you end up with weird, skinny buildings, you end up with things that do not fit in with the character of the neighborhood. This item, like, take away the impervious, because I'm not supporting that at all. This item, as well as item 2 and item 1, all need to go back for more work, more time, more research, and some kind of consensus between what the city officials want and what the city residents want. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Amy Flugheft. I live at 537 Webster Street. I'm a resident of Traverse City for the last 30 years. I am most specifically also against this this number 5, especially where it relates to maximum impervious surfaces increases. I agree with the previous speakers about the potential loss of tree cover, which is significant, the lack of ability for the land to absorb runoff and decrease erosion based on erratic climate change that could be coming our way. It also is, I think, an issue related to the trees, to be potentially creating unintentional heat islands in certain neighborhoods, likely to be the more dense and potentially lower income areas, which create less comfortable areas for children to be outside, walking to school, walking to work. That's been pretty well established in a lot of urban areas, that the wealthy people get the trees, and against reducing impervious or increasing impervious surface, I would like to see more impervious area, or more pervious drainable surfaces.
We got you.
Porous. Thank you. Porous, thank you. I am also concerned about the mismatched pattern that could be resulting from this pretty significant reduction in lot area and widths. And I do think that could harm the character of neighborhoods, which would increase put it this way, will make it less desirable to live in those areas and those neighborhoods, and it would be less attractive. So I really think that I hope that that is, I feel like it needs to be more carefully considered so that the character of the neighborhoods is preserved. And that's just my opinion. So I thank you for your time, and I appreciate your efforts in this area.
Rick, you were next. Mary? Okay, gotcha.
Mary Mills, 424 North Elmwood. Just one point of clarification on this. The increase, they say, in impervious surfaces is only 5%, when in actuality it's 9%. When you do the math, by reducing the size of the lot size to come up with a common denominator, it is actually not 5% increase, it is a 9% increase in impervious surface. And this was brought forward, if I remember correctly. There are instances where someone has a larger lot that they wanted to divide, but they couldn't because of dimension size. And rather than just put this throughout the whole city, we have done this a number of times as granted variances and looked at special cases. And that has been a history that the Planning Commission has done and that the City Commission has done. And rather than subject citywide change with this, I ask you that, to throw this one out. Thank you.
Rick Buckholder, 932 Kelly Street. I'm a Traverse City resident. One thing that I haven't heard you consider, I think I brought it up in a past meeting, is that some of the things you're talking about tonight, the potential zoning changes of the 6, there's several, would have an adverse effect to our 2 nationally registered historical neighborhoods. It took them years and years to get those designations. One is Boardman neighborhood, which is huge. I think it goes all the way down to Ray Road from Boardman. And nationally registered central neighborhood is historical, nationally registered historical from 5th Street to, I believe, is 9th Street. And I contacted the State Historical Preservation Office about this some months ago. I can't remember all the details, but no matter where you are in the country, if you have your neighborhood registered nationally as a historic neighborhood, it gives you certain protections from changing the uniqueness and the character and other adjectives. And if something happens that the neighbors don't feel fits in, I think you can expect the neighborhood associations to kick back both against the city and any developer trying to do something that they don't care for. So you need to look into the details of what can and can't be done, number one, and how it can and can't be done in the historic neighborhoods I just mentioned. Thank you.
Paul Wilkins, 610 North Madison Street. I agree with the previous folks that have spoken with regard to tossing this one, not advancing it. It needs more time, simply needs more time. I wonder, how is this coordinating? Right now, MDOT's going through a plan to narrow North Madison Street between Front Street and Randolph, parking on only one side of the street. They're going to narrow it to slow traffic down. But yet we're going to increase density and make the lot sizes smaller, but have no requirement for parking. Where are these people going to park their cars? And yes, people do need cars. We live in Traverse City, and we do have winter here. I wonder about whether the left hand and the right hand is talking sometimes, because just a short time ago, I believe it was this committee, or maybe it was the zoning committee, but you approved converting a residential lot to a commercial lot, and I'm speaking of the Munson Avenue lot that's over there by Third Coast Bakery. That was a residentially zoned lot that was converted to commercial, but yet we're all admitting that there's a shortage in residential buildable lots. Rather than a trade or rather than some other type of conversion, that residential property is just gone. It's now commercial, right by Third Coast Bakery.
That's not right.
Not right.
It can
Not
still
right.
be built as apartments. Residential uses are allowed in commercial
Okay,
classifications.
or
It was a
commercial
change from one
short-term rentals
residential
because it's now
zoning to
commercial,
another.
right?
Yeah, short-term rentals are prohibited per the conditional rezoning of that parcel.
Okay. I wonder how many things have already gotten away where you kind of wish, man, could I get that one back? How about the Gillis project? The one on Gillis Street. Mitch, I remember you making a comment during the 124 unsuccessful zoning appeal where you go, you know, that one really didn't turn out the way we thought it would. But by right, they could do it. I caution you, send this back to committee. Let's make sure we have a thorough review so that by right, these narrow lots don't come back and get us some way we don't anticipate. The impervious surface
talk to
doesn't
us,
come
please.
back. All right? Guys, there's no rush. What's the rush? I don't think the next city council is going to say, God darn, they just handed us a lump. I think the citizens are going to go, you rammed it through prematurely. Thank you.
Sam Flamont, 1719 Apache Pass, city resident. On this one, I think on both sides of this, the impervious surface is an issue. I think as you start to deal with the runoff and all that good stuff, that does become a problem. But on the other side of this issue, smaller lots create smaller houses. There are setbacks. There are these things. Smaller houses will create a smaller price. People are not going to pay $500 a square foot for a house in downtown Traverse City. Also, they're not. For 2-bedroom, 1-bath, I'm very aware of how prices are. 56% of the people supported the R1 change that was actually brought by Mr. Winter here in this very meeting last week. Mr. Winter was very specific that we needed 1,010 rentals in the city limits. So I fear that people aren't hearing. They're not listening. They're waiting to speak. And I hope that you don't do that, because we also need 1,192 for sale units in the city limits. Mr. Winter clearly stated that. Art Krieger, when asked and questioned personally in front of everybody here one night, can we handle this with the infrastructure? Art Krieger, who works on the infrastructure, said 100% yes. Now, you don't have to believe him, but these are the answers that we're getting, and these are the answers that are given, and people aren't hearing them. That's the problem. The biggest problem is I don't hear you, you don't hear me for some certain reason. And then I keep hearing about the character of the neighborhoods and the housing types. Has anybody actually driven down Washington Street, State Street, Webster Street? Have you driven down where you see a mansion next to a single family, next to a brick ranch, next to a triplex, next to a duplex? So what's the character that we're talking? That is the character. That is our neighborhood. You can't tell me we're changing the character, because we're not. We're changing something for. I've also witnessed people up here who have voted against allowing triplexes and duplexes in areas where I know for a fact they own triplexes and duplexes, and they speak to it based on the character of the neighborhood. When they already own these properties in the neighborhoods they're talking about ruining the character of. What they're talking about is not wanting more competition. It's frustrating. Nobody hears anybody. I've heard everybody. I've written down these questions. 3 years ago, we tabled the R2. We tabled it again tonight. So we're not rushing anything through. We're not. It's been tabled. It just got tabled again. It is being thoughtfully thought about, I guess, whatever. I'm frustrated, and I'm done, Ben.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, please.
I'd like the comments, especially about the impervious surface. I share the concern. I think somebody tried to jump in here maybe as far as impervious surface and stormwater runoff. We do have requirements for commercial, but not residential. And I've walked plenty of city alleys and city streets and seen pitched roofs that drain right onto impervious surface. right into the alley or right into the street. And so, to me, it's tragedy of the commons, but there is opportunity to be a little bit more specific. So maybe if this advances all the way to the third round of voting, that E, F, and G could be a few more words added, so it can be increased from, say, 30% to 35% if the first flush or the first inch or 2 inch are kept on site, which is what we require of commercial properties. But right now, we don't require it of residential.
I was going to suggest that we divide this into part one, number 5, item 5, part 1, and part 2,
Well-
and divide it at the EFG level.
Well-
So the impervious surface is 1, and the lot size is another.
For the next meeting, you mean?
For the next meeting.
Yeah,
Well-
I was going to say, we don't have to change
Yeah.
the motion.
Well,
And that
all
goes
these
into,
are going to be taken up, and each one of these will be by themselves, but I know what you're saying. The minimum lots width and area is one thing, and the impervious surface is another. But that'll be addressed there, and we can make changes as we want to see fit as we move through it.
and I just wanted to say, I did second this somewhat hesitantly, but I wouldn't have seconded it if we weren't taking another pass at it, because I also am not super comfortable with these numbers, but I also know that there's
Yeah.
some possibilities to either just straight vote it down or to maybe
Yeah,
make some
Again,
amendments.
as we're moving it forward, doesn't mean this is what it's going to end up being adopted at the end. So it gives us chances to say, yes, we want to talk about it some more, and we can make whatever suggested changes we would wish as we continue to move the process. Okay.
Yes, I agree with Commissioner Werner's suggestion that we do put a change in the impervious surface, that yes, we can allow these increases, but that we are necessitating the capture of the initial 1 or 2 inch, whatever is consistent with our commercial zoning requirements,
Yeah.
and treat that on site. That seems relatively
Or
minor.
store on site, let it go down into the ground, however.
But to address some of the other comments, this is a relatively small change in the percentage. And as far as tree cover, anything that is going to be built to increase impervious surface area will trigger building permit, which automatically triggers our tree ordinance. So if they are cutting down trees, then they are required to replace those trees.
Yes, right.
And maintain our healthy tree canopy. And to address a comment directed at me specifically, for the Gillis properties, yes, I do regret what got built there, but that is, I'd say, in the opposite direction. I wish, since it's an area next to our downtown and near to the bay that is commercial in nature, I wish that a hotel had been able to be built there, and it would have been one single building rather than a bunch of small blocks.
Mayor, if I could make one quick comment. Whether it makes into the city commission motions or not, we are taking very copious notes on the feedback, both from the commission and also the audience, and listening for where there are concerns and consensus on the commission. So we'll be taking this all into mind when we work to draft first drafts of what you're asking to come back. And then, of course, you can give us some additional feedback at those introductory discussions.
Thank you. And from the public, you'll get to do your public comment again if you'd like to come back. We would appreciate seeing you. We haven't seen this many people in 2 years, you know?
No, those of us who serve on the planning commission have seen a lot of these people a lot.
Why? It's been great it's great to have company in the room for a change sometimes, you know. Okay.
I just wanted to say about item 5, items A, B, C, and D, those are really important for the possible building of smaller homes, which are one of the things that might become more affordable.
Okay.
And to that point, we do have a lot of inconsistency as far as what a lot size is across Traverse City, whether it's from surveying errors 150 years ago, or just at some point, 3 city lots were cobbled together and somebody put one house on them, or a developer came through and laid out a neighborhood that had non-standard, non-rectangular lots. And whether you're measuring from one side versus other, you can get very different numbers.
Okay. Okay. We have a motion and support to move this for further consideration. Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay. go back up to number 4. We are correct. It says without a lot split. They did find that. Okay, so allow 2 principal homes on lots that are twice the minimum area with a lot split.
Without a lot split.
Without a lot split, right. Okay,
I'd like to move that we advance item 4, 2 principal dwellings in an R1AB on a lot without a lot split.
Support.
okay. Anyone have any comments out in the audience on this one? Or are you guys starting to get tired yet?
Sam Flamont, 1719 Apache Pass, city resident. My question on this one is, can a duplex be built if somebody lives in it? Is that considered a primary residence because they live in it? I think that is something that people will want to know. Because all of a sudden you do have a building that you're living in, you didn't split it. Technically, you live in one house, you build the primary, you build a house over here. Can you sell that lot? Can you sell that house? Because clearly you can't have 2 primary residences. So if you sell that, you build a duplex and you sell it, and someone lives in the duplex, is that a primary residence? Is that considered in this? That's a question I would like to know. I think people would like to know, because I think that's one that could sneak by, and all of a sudden people go, why the hell are duplexes getting built everywhere on these lots without splits? That's what people really get fired up about. Also, I think it's important, I don't know why it's so important, but everybody else does it. So I lived here 30 years, and the only reason it hasn't been 50 is because I'm not 20 years older. I got 3 kids that live here. I worry about their future. I am an active member in the community as far as giving back, as far as all that good stuff, and I think that, I don't know why, it's just really important. Everybody says it, so I have to say it. I've lived here 30 years. It's important to me, this town. The future of this town lies with the people who aren't here 30 years yet, right? And I think that is such a thing that is lost on everybody. Well, last meeting, someone said, you can have my house when I die in 15 years. Well, that's super helpful to the people that live in the Walmart parking lot right now. Talk about homelessness. Like, we're talking about homelessness a lot here. And I know the people at the end of, Ben, you didn't start my clock.
I've got it here.
Okay. Because I was going to go, man. People at the end of 11th Street keep getting brought up. And they're homeless. But if you drive through Walmart, Home Depot, you'll see a lot of vans with coverings on the windows. They don't move because they're homeless. Those vans don't move because the people living there are homeless. And they need places to live, and a lot of times those people are looking for just a rental, and they can't find one. Not because the prices are too high, because there's not a rental available. But they're homeless people. So we can't, I know for one fact, we can't build ourselves out of homelessness. You cannot build yourself out of homelessness. But you definitely can't unbuild yourself out of homelessness. If you just don't build, you have the same issue. So we have to create housing. We are in a situation where the city's growing. People are coming here whether you like it or not. Whether you've been here 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, people are moving here. And they need a place to live, and unless you want them living in your alley, because they will, and they do, in the Pines at the end of 11th Street, or in the parking lots of stores that we visit, you're gonna have to bring housing. We cannot go backwards. It will not happen. It will not happen. People aren't just going to start magically leaving Traverse City because we wish them to. We have a problem, and you have an opportunity to help remedy that problem. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, housing is the issue, right? Housing,
you,
we need
Mr.
for more of
Flamont.
it.
Thank
we
you.
need more.
Okay. Okay. Okay, on item 4. Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion and support to move this forward, and that all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay. Last one, number 6. Now, if there's anything that we heard a lot about is ADUs. My recommendation is we just leave this for another day.
I have a question about ADUs, first of all, to clarify, because we didn't have the attached here. I didn't go through it fast enough. ADUs have standards, universal, right, where they're built. I'm looking to my planning commissioner associates up here. So it has to do with the housing, not the neighborhood that they're in and what's allowed, correct? I think that got mentioned at some point in a public
Well,
comment.
if it's in a historic district.
Well, historic districts are,
Right.
all
Yeah, someone
right,
said
that
that
trumps
earlier.
everything.
Yeah.
So historic district trumps everything. So I I would not want to take up everything under ADUs. I would like to take up ADU, or item number 6, personally, with just A. So not with duplexes, not with triplexes, not with quadplexes, not removing the owner occupancy, just allowing more of them. So I don't know if that has, I guess I'll throw that out. I move that we move forward item 6, accessory dwelling units modifications with the removal of the annual cap of 15 permitted ADUs. End of sentence.
If we're already tabling item 1, which would have allowed triplexes and quadplexes in R2 zoning, I see no reason why we can't also allow, in this case, item C, which would, because
I mean, that's, if we, I'll, here's what it is, because this is just introduction.
Yeah.
I'll be generous and put C in there too. I don't know that I'll be supporting that when it comes to a final vote. We can have that discussion. But I'll open that up so we can have the conversation.
A and C is those two parts.
I support you, Amy, on this, and I was talking with Connor Miller, I think, today about ideas with the ADUs and communities that have given incentives to people to deed restrict their ADUs, to control the prices of those things. I think there's a lot we can do there that isn't in this, and we don't want to deal with now. I think that has to go back to the Planning Commission. One thing that I do want to just throw out there, removing the owner occupancy requirement for permitting an ADU will mean we'll get fewer. I get that, but I also don't want to take that off. But we do have that it has to be owner occupied currently. And what we're finding now, and you should all be aware of this, is that seasonal people are starting to buy our homes. And so when they go, if they have an ADU, they're being asked to remove the people, the long-term renters in their ADUs, when they go to Florida. And so I would like to change the existing, not take it off, but change it to primary residence, so that if you have an ADU and it's your primary residence, and you have a long-term renter in the ADU, they can stay when you go. I don't know, just know that that's out there and it's happening, that people are losing their long-term housing because of the way we've written it, which was the right way to write it. Because at the time, citizens did not want to have ADUs at all unless we had that in there. So anyway, if you want to just do it clean, remove the annual cap, sure, but I do think we have to think about that wording.
There are other opportunities that are, frankly, I haven't gotten a reason why they're not utilized, but a fractional ownership scheme or a site condo could allow an ADU to have an owner occupancy.
Well, I mean, that's the motion I put out. Do I have a second on it? Actually, I've already got lost in the
If
process.
it includes C, I'll
It
second.
does. It'll include A and C, and that's it. So just everybody knows, for discussion, not necessarily passing tonight, it'll remove the annual cap and possibly allow ADUs with duplexes, but nothing else that's itemized there, as far as my motion goes. So that's what's out there, and it's been seconded. So, I guess again, going back to kind of how we discussed the first item, but a different take on it, I think there's other things that can be done, but there's also other processes that we have to look at. And right now, we're taking on these suggestions that were meant to improve housing options. And the reality is, I heard some people at different previous meeting, was it last week? I don't even know when time flies now. But I think we really have to be honest about what we're seeing in housing trends, where previous generations were married by the time they were 30, maybe had children maybe in that age too. 25% of millennials, I saw this somewhere, so I looked it up to double check, are unmarried, and only 22% of those 25 live with partners. So we're not looking at middle income families that have children that why would we need ADUs? We're looking at middle income people who have been paying exorbitant amounts for rent and can't afford to save up for a house, so are looking for things like ADUs, because especially around here, we've talked about people getting priced out of things and the high cost of rent. And when I talk about the high cost of rent, I talk about the entire county, not just Traverse City, where I've heard from some people who didn't want to come speak publicly and saying, you know, I was paying $1,700 a month at an apartment outside of the city, but I found an ADU I could rent for $1,100 a month. Those couple $100 every month make a difference in actually being able to save up a little for a down payment on a home for an individual who's in their 30s, which millennials are now, to 40s, early 40s, and or them and their partner. But it's what you're seeing a lot is a lot of people in the younger generations aren't buying homes. I'm sorry, not buying homes. They're not starting families because they don't even have homes. And so I don't disagree that ADUs are going to solve our problem. None of these are a magic bullet. I think we got moved along on, I think it was 2 where this kind of came up, but none of these are a magic bullet. And given the cost of building ADUs, given the rarity of any kind of open property and the cost of a house with the idea of possibly tearing it down, a lot of these things are going to see 1 or 2 here and there. But just like an apartment building, an affordable apartment building that we build with 8 units or something, these are going to be a few things here and there. And I think ADUs are an option for that with supervision, with neighborhoods in mind. There's a lot in neighborhoods already, and I think for the most part, with the exception of a couple that came through before the regulations were kind of evened out, they've been mostly unnoticed by a lot of neighbors. And I'm not going to say that no neighbor has noticed any ADU. I know there's no universal statement like that exists, but they're in a lot more parts of neighborhoods than I think a lot of people realize. And so to me, this is one that I think we could move forward.
Yeah, I also, oh, hi, can I speak?
Well, you were going to anyway. So.
You know I was.
Yeah, I know it was.
Someone
As if
mentioned
I was
last
going to
time.
stop you.
Someone who looked like me said last time that she was ready to let go of her large house, but she couldn't afford to move someplace else. And I think ADUs are going to be a tool for allowing people to age in place, where the people who were in the primary home move to the ADU. I know that my husband and I have talked about that, and then renting your home, that was your family home, in front, and be able to afford to do that.
Well, and not even just renting, but I've talked to some people who have done that, but they just add, because it's usually a family member, they add that family member to the deed on the home. So they are, the person who's in the home is the primary, on the primary deed, but then the downsizing family or couple or person moves into the ADU.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion on the table here of moving forward, item 6, A and C only.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to consideration to put F in there for one reason, to see if we need to change it to primary owner.
So, but
I wanna
this says remove it, so maybe we just send that back to the planning commission?
I'm not sending anything back. I mean, I
Well,
think, I like
if
your
we
suggestion.
if we advance A and C, then planning can
They
later
can
come
bring
back with
that up,
F.
but
Yeah,
I like
planning
your
can pick it up if they
suggestion
want.
instead
Yeah,
of
yeah.
owner occupied.
Right.
Primary, yeah, so that's just a different definition, but
Right.
the same purpose, especially if that owner has a year-round renter. I hate to see them leave because they decide to be a snowbird next year, so. Okay, but it's another question, then I drop
No
it.
F.
Somebody
Okay,
pass that
I'll
on.
let y'all make a comment on that. Grant, good to see you, where you been?
Hello,
Do you live in
Mr.
town?
Mayor.
Not yet.
Highlander. Hello. Grant Parsons, 6936 Mission Ridge. Thank you for listening. It's been a good meeting, and now on this item 6, I think you've left me in the dust completely because I'm having trouble catching up with you. But Mr. Genzer, when you I know you're taking notes, and I watched you, and you said you're taking voluminous notes. If you're carrying what are we carrying? We're talking about 6B, 6A,
No.
6C, and 6F?
No, we're
6A and C.
6A and C only.
Okay, A and C only. I think the big star note on this ought to be that we're doing this to incentivize affordable housing again, or more affordable housing, and you ought to just do the innovative thing of saying ADUs, you're going to limit the rent.
Okay.
And
Okay.
you can do that with pilot programs. You
Yeah.
can do that with subsidized programs by different methods, okay? But I'm just saying, I'm asking if the purpose of this is to accomplish a task, address the doggone task directly and say, if we're going to upset the equity in holders in the neighborhood because of the parking, the increased traffic, increased noise, increased whatever, The trade-off is to at least accomplish a good purpose, which is to say, we're going to make sure that ADUs are accessible for people of low income. The gentleman who is apparently a service worker is worried about moving out of town. What if you told him all the ADUs are going to be $900 a month max in Traverse City now?
We don't have that right this moment.
We don't.
Well, work on it. You're smart. You are very smart, and you can do this.
If I was that smart, I probably wouldn't
If
be here.
Lansing helps us.
You can, okay, but Lansing does help, and Lansing wants to prohibit, as one gentleman was saying, the new prohibition on
Well, we'll get on the idea of on pilots here in a bit after we
All
get
right,
done with
well,
this.
okay, I'm just saying, go to that purpose. You have good purposes, and you can innovate, go to it. I'm asking you to do that, because as a member of the public, I'm willing to compromise my views against densification if I think it's accomplishing something other than realtors getting rich and developers exploiting the city. Thank you very much.
Mary Mills, 424 North Elmwood. Right now, we have a cap on 15 for ADUs, which has never come close. We have a neighbor who just went through the process, very easy. We've been told it's very arduous process. It's very hard to do this. It's going to make it easier for homeowners. He had no problem whatsoever getting the permit and building his ADU. On C, is the owner going to be occupied in one of the duplexes? Or is this, once we head down that road, we're creating opportunities for investors to have rental incomes without living there. So if we have a duplex in the R2, well, if it's owner occupied as far as an annual cap for a single family home or whatever, shouldn't the owner also live in one of the duplexes? Because there's a discrepancy there.
Right now, if you want an ADU, you have to
live
Yes.
in
on the,
one of
on
your...
the property. Yes.
Okay. Because that now becomes, doesn't it, it's my understanding in the eyes of the city, once you start renting out an ADU, that is a small business, and you lose your 100% homestead on your principal dwelling. I mean, so it's this creating of small businesses in the neighborhood. What is the concern?
Sorry, I'll defer to our, there she is, city attorney. She's hiding behind city manager, but I believe on the ADU, and it's a new structure, and so yes, your taxes go up, and that is a business, but on your, say it's a detached ADU, because there are attached if it's detached, but on your residence, if that wasn't part of the home improvement project, your taxes have not increased.
They don't
on your
increase.
100-year-old home.
Okay.
Only your taxes increase on
The new structure.
Okay. So what it comes down to, this is already allowed in our current zoning ordinance.
Yes.
And why are we stirring this up to add a few little things that are, that are distressing to people? Thank you.
Hello again, Heather Shaw, 655 West Orchard Drive. I am in favor of allowing ADUs by right in residential. I think that even though the permitting process isn't actually in reality onerous, people think the permitting process is onerous and they don't do it. Or they think, I'll take out a permit and then I'll have to renew it in a year or two, and in fact I want to work on converting my garage over 10 years. So I'm in favor of that. However, I think you need different rules for detached and attached ADUs. I think detached ADUs need to use the footprint of an existing building, like a garage or a carriage house. Ann Arbor does this. It keeps the character of the neighborhood looking the same because the building proportions are the same. You're also not losing any trees. I think that this is exactly the definition of gentle infill. However, ADUs with duplexes, I'm not in favor of this because that is the space that you need for the extra car. So no ADUs with duplexes. Thank you.
Were you guys, okay.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sam Flamont, 1719 Apache Pass. I actually not a big fan of the ADUs with the duplexes. I think that we're already upzoning, and if we're going to take that step to single-family allow a duplex, we've just made that now a three-family. And I don't think that's what we're doing here. And so that's where, you know, I'm on both sides just in a lot of places, and I know people think I'm not, but I am. I really am, and I think that with the ADUs, and if we're going to upzone, let's do that. Okay, great. Let's not add another layer of it by saying, hey, you can build a fourplex on R2, and then you can have an ADU. Now you got a 5-unit. Now you made it a 5-family. So go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
Might I press this?
Would you like?
Can I get some more time
Can you
back? Because
hold
I got
that
some
and we'll
things.
let him?
Yeah,
Let's
he's the
just-
last one.
Okay, go.
So we're not advancing item B, which I
Yeah.
think is what you're discussing. We're advancing item C, which is ADUs with duplexes in the R2. So this is pre-existing duplexes in the R2.
Yep.
So it's not that my home in the R1B, I suddenly next year change to a duplex, and then the next year I add an ADU. So now it is 3 families where there used to be 1. Maybe, if that.
No, yeah, that's fine. And I'm saying if it gets sent back to the planning commission, I think all that stuff needs to just, I would vote against that as well. So, but on this, there's a lot of things that I think that are getting lost in this, and one of them is how hard a lot of these things are to do. So if you live on 6th Street, can I get a 30-second warning?
Sure.
If you live on 6th Street, 7th Street, and you have a house for $1.3 million, no one's going to tear your house down and build a duplex. Because in here, I guarantee you some people, some form or fashion, everybody in this room is investing. Whether it's the stock market, whether it's real estate, whatever, whether it's Bitcoin, I don't care, you're investing. Okay? And I know you're not investing to lose money. And if you think Blackstone and all these big hedge funds are coming in to buy up property to lose money, or if you think the average investor who's going to come in and buy up your house for $1.3 million, tear it down for another $70,000, build a duplex for roughly $350 a square foot, which is, let's say, 1,700 square foot house, another $595,000. You're into this thing over $2 million, and you're going to get about $3,000 to $4,000 a month in rent, and you are going to be, by the time you pay taxes and insurance, you're going to be losing a whole lot of money that you're not going to make up with appreciation, because duplexes don't appreciate with the market; they appreciate with the rents that they can get. So it's that. That is the one biggest thing. And then the last thing I'm going to say is this. If you really want your job to be easy, okay? If you really want your job to be easy, remove every neighborhood except Traverse Heights, and this room would be empty.
30 seconds left.
Yep.
This room would be absolutely empty because nobody would care anymore. And that's a shame.
Didn't understand that one, but that's okay.
No, I get it.
Okay, so,
I did.
anybody else?
Wait.
All right,
Oh, just one thing I was just going to point out really quick because it's come up a couple. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Justin, I didn't see you.
Justin Reed, 630 Kaiser Drive, apartment 1B. As far as the comments made about the ADUs is I'm in support of number 6. I don't think anybody else is going to be losing their property. The city's not going to go ahead and just say, "Oh, we're going to take your property." I don't think that's going to happen. That's just in the fantasy world. So, thank you.
Okay.
Rick Buckholder, 932 Kelly Street. I'm a Traverse City resident. When I complain about ADUs for the benefit of the affected neighbors on either side is their massiveness. And Commissioner Colbert, I heard you say once that you don't hear people complain about it. When they first came out, they complained bitterly, and it fell on deaf ears, so the word got around, so people don't even bother anymore. But they're as big as a house, so if you live on either side, everybody in this, everybody wherever they live treasures the privacy of their own backyard, and that's lost. I mean, you have people right above you, if you're a lady and you want to go out and sunbathe in your bathing suit. I mean, you got people you don't even know probably in a window right above you. This is happening to a friend of mine and her husband in Birmingham. Somebody bought the house next door, is putting in a swimming pool, huge garage, and a massive apartment above it, or ADU. I mean, there is no voice for the most affected people in this discussion. And secondly, these things cost a fortune, so I need to reflect back on if we do this, what are we accomplishing? If somebody who has a lot of money wants to move into Traverse City, I don't care if they can't find a place. It doesn't bother me a bit. I mean, really, I've heard how much these things cost. And I've seen them around town, and they are not cheap, so the rents aren't going to be cheap or whatever happens to it. So, I mean, what's the point in doing this citywide? And this gentleman mentioned Traverse Heights, and that's where I live. And years ago, I lived in Atlanta when I had a population of 1.3 million people, I think. And within 10 years, with predatory banks, which is a term you should learn, so it's happening here for the last 10 years, predatory banks and real estate companies and the real estate agents, they go around in helicopters, which actually happens up here now, and they just look for properties. They'll buy out entire neighborhoods to put in. Anyways, gentrification, it pushes out the working class people that you supposedly are trying to save. And this isn't the solution. I mean, ask the people who get hurt the most before you just use a broad brush and allow these. Thank you.
Paul Wilkins, 610 North Madison. Are there size requirements for ADUs?
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a plan.
We're not supposed to have a conversation,
I-
sorry.
We've
Yes,
already broken that 8
size.
times.
I think it's great. I share your comments and your concerns with this and taking away the privacy of your neighbors' backyards. So, if we've never met the cap of 15, why do we feel that we need to stir the pot and make this by right? Why not go through the process of approvals? And if we hit 15, and we hit 16, and we hit 17, why not just approve them and just be more lenient? Why do we have to open it up by right? Again, I question and I think back of the decisions you've made that you can't get back. I don't see the rush. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right. Thanks, everybody. Okay, we have a motion on the yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I just wanted to say 2 quick things. One, first of all, I appreciated Ms. Shaw's comments that I do think people think it's an erroneous process when it's really not. That's part of the reason behind this. The other thing I just wanted to point out to Mr. Parsons' comments, I love talking about the pilots, that they're great. The pilot program, though, even with the new one, is 5 or more units, so it's not going to apply to duplexes or to ADUs, but there was something, and the alphabet soup is all jumbled in my head right now. I thought they were NEFs or something like that. No, not NEZs that Sean presented on, though, where it can apply to 2 units or fewer.
There is more coming down the pike with that.
Thank you.
for
So
the
that's an
different
option that'll be
programs.
out there for people who might want to do an ADU, because ADUs, as was mentioned, I think, but I don't know if the price was mentioned, are well into 6 figures to do. So it's not something that the average person can just decide to plop up because we pass it through. But with things like a pilot incentive, well, not similar to a pilot incentive, let me not confuse it again, there might be more people who would be interested in that option for the tax reduction that would offer.
Yeah.
So just to clarify a couple points that got brought up there.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to bring up. There is legislation out there. We have to get our ordinances in place, and our first pilot ordinance will be introduced in a couple of weeks, hopefully, so that we can start it. But there's other incentives that the state has passed for workforce housing and affordable housing and whatever. Okay, so it's coming. It's just not here yet. So anyway, yeah.
If I might, just to be absolutely clear, that those things are coming and we're working on those diligently right now. But two things that we statutorily are not allowed to do, rent control
Mhm.
Yeah.
and inclusionary zoning.
Mhm.
That's not on the table.
Okay.
Legally.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Okay. Did you poke me? Okay.
Not this time.
Oh, you poked me for
For
her to
Lauren,
poke
yes.
me. Okay, never mind. I get a lot of.
I think you're set.
I think I'm set now. All right. So on our, we have a motion for accessory dwelling to move forward for further discussion of accessory dwelling unit modifications A and C only.
Mhm.
And so with that, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Nay. Okay, roll call, please, on that one.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Shamro.
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
Commissioner Stanley.
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell.
Yes.
Commissioner Colbert.
Yes.
Commissioner Werner.
Yes.
And Mayor Lewis.
No. Okay, we'll take it from there. All right, thank you, everyone, for your patience and indulgence on this subject tonight and letting us get through it, and thank you for your comments. So we'll be moving on to appointments.
It meant onerous.
Huh?
Sorry, I just realized I used the wrong word earlier. I think I said erroneous accidentally instead of onerous. As somebody who works in books and publishing, I'm ashamed of myself.
Okay. Our next one under, if y'all depart quietly, we'll continue on without taking a recess, and maybe we can leave here all here sooner. Yes. Which one?
Someone at the podium.
Huh?
But it's not public comment.
We're taking up another item right now, so you have to wait till the end for public comment.
I'll be happy to do that, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Okay, consideration of appointment of the city manager as primary member and assistant city manager as alternative member to the Traverse Transportation Coordinating Initiative, and also to consider the approval of the city manager's appointment of the city engineer and city planning director to the technical committee.
Motion.
Okay.
I just have a question. Is it
Second.
possible with the TTCI's bylaws that for the alternate, it's assistant city manager or the city manager's delegate?
It's possible.
Okay.
This covers us for now. But yes, you could do it
I'm
that
just
way.
saying that we could have the default be assistant city manager, but it could be some person, considering we don't have a permanent city manager right now or a permanent assistant city manager.
Yes.
Or city engineer.
Yes.
Well,
Well, we have an acting.
Yes.
They have an acting, so they're all in place. Yes.
I'm fairly supportive of this, but supportive. I'll vote yes when it comes along. But we're talking about 4 members of city staff being assigned to this. Do we have any idea of how many hours a month that requirement is, that sort of thing?
So it's going to be heavier on the front end because we're still establishing. It's hard to say, but there's an annual process for designating those funds to various projects that we will likely only be up for every few years, depending on how they structure. I would say, just based on my current understanding, the bulk of the time is going to be on that technical committee. That's where a lot of the work is going to get done. The policy committee is going to be where, on the front end, we're going to be adopting bylaws and all that kind of stuff. But then it'll be when they get into vetting projects and things like that. So maybe that's biannually or quarterly, but the technical is going to be more active.
Okay, because my concern
Mark, do you want to add to that?
we're essentially spending $1 of staff time to get $1.20 in funds coming in. Yeah, it's still worth it, but marginal.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I think it's of higher quality to have staff there because of the institutional knowledge.
Oh, it's
going
quality to
forward.
have our staff there,
And-
but how many dollars are we bringing in for how much of staff time,
Well,
essentially?
versus sending me, who I'm not an expert in it, just
Well,
an
your time's
elected
worth money,
official.
too.
Yeah, and noticing after serving on this that all the counterparts there are not always elected officials. They're staff. That,
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, on the technical committee, from what I understand, that's where the real work and the recommendations flow up
Yeah.
to the main committee, which is where we want the city manager to act in. and that's almost the same as the Board of Public Works. You know, they're the ones that have to work with their counterparts of township supervisors. So that's kind of where we're at.
Particularly on the policy committee, most likely only one of the two are going to attend each meeting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, all right. Okay, there is a recommended motion for that, please.
Oh, we already made it.
Oh, you did?
Mark
Well,
made it.
you-
Mark said so motion, I seconded.
Oh, okay.
So I just said
Yeah.
moved.
I didn't get my second win yet, so hang on here, folks. We're gonna try to get through here.
Do you need
Okay.
to order you coffee?
No,
we're out.
you don't want me to have coffee now. Okay, anyone from the public have any thoughts on this they want to share? Okay, thank you. All right, we have a motion and support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, we have an ad hoc interview committee for the Downtown Development Authority. We have two slots that are there. One would like to be reconsidered, and the other one, we have an open slot, I understand, at this
Correct.
point. So, and by the luck of the draw, serving with me on that committee is going to be Commissioner Stanley and Commissioner Treadwell, so,
Quick question.
yeah.
If any of the candidates for these seats were interviewed in the previous round earlier this summer, we do not have to interview them again. Is that correct? If they've
That
been
is
if
correct.
It's within the last 6 months?
That is
Okay,
correct.
Thank you.
Mhm. Good point.
Okay. All right. All right, entertain a motion, please.
I'll make the recommendation that an ad hoc interview committee be established to make recommendations regarding 2 mayoral appointments to the Downtown Development Authority, terms expiring September 15th, 2027, for seats held by Pete Kirkwood and Steve Nance, and that the mayor's appointment of Mayor Richard I. Lewis, Commissioner Mai Stanley, and Commissioner Mitchell Treadwell to such committee, with Mayor Lewis as chair and Commissioner Treadwell as secretary.
Support.
Any comments? Okay, we have a motion and support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay. Coast Guard Committee. We have,
Oh, it's me.
how many seats do we have open on this one?
There's 3 seats.
3 seats on this particular committee. By the luck of the draw, we have Mayor Pro Tem Shamrow, Commissioner Wilson, and Commissioner Colbert to serve on this committee.
I'll make the motion that an ad hoc interview committee be established to make recommendation regarding 2 appointments to the Coast Guard City Commission. Should that be 3? Term expiring, oh, sorry, never mind. Term expiring August 25th, 2026, seats held by Dave Barr, Jessica Britzman, and Polly Cairns, and that Mayor Pro Tem Shamrow, Commissioner Wilson, and Commissioner Colbert be appointed as to such committee, with Mayor Pro Tem Shamrow as chair and Commissioner Colbert as secretary.
Support.
Okay, we've got a motion to support. All right, I'll take any comments on this one?
I just have a quick comment. I think it was by staff request previously that we put the secretary in there, and that was before we started putting the form in, the Google form, because people weren't sure who had what sheets. So now that we have the Google form in, I guess I would say, because it's not consistent each time anyways, that maybe we don't have to appoint the secretary at the commission meeting. We can do that at the ad hoc.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. That'll be fine. Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Okay, we're under public, okay, there's some reports and announcements and correspondence that are in your packet. Public comment, we have no reserved public comment. We have general public comment. And Ms. Anderson, we're ready for you. I'll let you go first. You're welcome. And thank you for your indulgence, ma'am.
I'm Jackie Anderson. I live at 1725 Comanche Street in Traverse City. This is in reference to the density zoning proposals that you have been working your way through. And it has been a difficult process, hasn't it? You've heard from literally hundreds of Traverse City residents asking you to do this or do that or consider this or remember that. I am here tonight to ask you to do perhaps the most difficult thing of all. Do nothing. Give yourselves the gift of time. time to research, time to analyze, time to listen, time to fully understand the impact of density zoning and its action on Traverse City today and on Traverse City of the future. Our housing challenges won't disappear if you pause for a month or 2 or 3. So please continue your due diligence until you are confident that you know the outcomes of density zoning and that there will be no unintended consequences further down the road. So do the smart thing. Tonight, please do nothing. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else up here for public comment? General public comment.
So this is, my name is Justin Reed. I live in Traverse City, Michigan. To talking about the runoff issues, and impervious services. I live on Cottage Drive, and there's a portion of Cottage Drive that's owned by Munson, and there's a storm drain that has not been vacuumed out, and it's a storm drain that just continuously overflows, and I cannot get the I talked to the property owner of the commons, and his thing is the tax parcel ID where that stormwater is at is Munson's responsibility. And Munson does not want to fix that portion of the road, or they do want to fix their vacuum out any other stormwater drain. So that is a very difficult place for travel, and when you're talking about commercial items with zoning, is if you can't get Munson willing to fix their issues, what will it take for private individuals, for these other properties, for these zoning changes to make changes to conform with anything else? That's me trying to articulate. And I promise you, I will not sue you. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Yes, sir.
Just a note, probably should have announced earlier, but we are in the process of scheduling a road trip, a mobile study session to discuss stormwater, and that very area will likely be a stop for us if that all comes together. Currently targeting the 27th or 25th? 25th, from 11 to 1, I want to say is the date.
11 to 1 is right.
So that is an issue that we are going to be visiting and looking at as stormwater discussion part 1.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments coming from the commission? Just want to remind the public out there that is still with us and still awake. Thursday is we will be interviewing 5 candidates for the office of city manager. We welcome all to be here to be a part of that, but more important, we also invite you to come here, to be here at 5 o'clock in the room that's right back here to meet the candidates. You can have individual conversations with them. Your thoughts will be, the individual that's been working the process for us will be searching your thoughts and, reporting back to us. So please come and share and meet. So take it from there. Thank you.
And just as in honor of the end of summer yesterday with the Labor Day holiday.
Oh, no, that's not till the 21st. I don't give up that easy.
The Boardman Weir, the salmon trap and harvest facility, will be starting operations tomorrow with grates going into the river. So anybody that is trying to paddle the river will have to portage around them, and anybody that's hoping to catch a salmon, I don't know if they're moving very much. Last I checked, not much, but they won't be able to fish within 100 yards of the weir.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you, everybody, for your time and for your for your respect. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Good discussion.
This meeting is hereby adjourned, unless y'all want to stay longer.
Sure. See you guys Thursday.
Yeah, talk.